Chapter 1946. He had been thinking about the source law for a long time, even before he gave a name. At that time, he was just imagining how many problems could be solved if he could use the law of the chaos era. Many years had passed since then, and he had explored hundreds of paths, piecing together a lot of fragments and materials. His efforts and the price he paid today were only enough to support a path that seemed to be successful. Now, he was at the stage where he desperately wanted to break through the door. But the door was a little hard, and the path was a little slippery. He had lost count of how many times he fell, and his elbows were swollen, but he still could not break through the door. The result was the same as what he had expected before he was pushed down. It had nothing to do with his condition. His current condition was not bad, but it was still acceptable. It was not a problem for him to change forms and cast origin, chaos, a dozen times. Even in this state, he could not find a way to fuse the heart of the world with the seventh stage. Moreover, he would still be stuck on the path of the fifth and sixth stages. Nothing would go smoothly. This was not his own problem. If it really had something to do with the concept, wouldn't that be nonsense? How could he fix it? Was he going to give up halfway on this path? But he could not seem to find a more reliable path. No way, no way, no way, no way. After destroying the 1000th world core, Yin Nuashing felt a little frustrated. He rolled his eyes and let out a long sigh. He did not know how many world cores and environmental laws he had secretly taken from the Sea of Energy. If someone was watching over the Sea of Energy, his movements would have been exposed. If I really lack the concept, the power of the concept, what should I do? I suddenly have a very wonderful idea. Yin Nuashing muttered in his heart before he had a flash of inspiration. His eyes lit up, and he sat up abruptly, but he did not sit up. He was still locked down by the two girls. They were really in combat mode and kept him here. A wonderful idea was indeed a wonderful idea. His teammates would occasionally have some wonderful ideas, but most of them would be strangled to death in the cradle. He was different. He had popped up and was about to execute it immediately because no one was there to strangle his nerves, especially at this time. Rolling his eyes, he looked in the direction of the sanctuary of creation. He felt that no one would pay attention to this place in a short period of time, so he was relieved. He sneakily grabbed all the world cores on the surface of the Sea of Energy and stuffed them into his soul. He lay down and thought for a while. He raised his hand and summoned the Netheruin sword and the rhythm of light. He poked the rhythm of light with the Netheruin sword and left a mark on it. He then threw the latter into the Sea of Energy and stuffed the Netheruin sword into his soul. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. His soul and consciousness quietly dived and went to the source environment again. Visiting the source environment consecutively in a short period of time had caused a certain degree of wear and tear on his soul and consciousness. It seemed that every time he entered and exited, part of his soul and consciousness would be damaged. This time, he felt dizzy not long after he entered the source environment, and his head was buzzing. This time, the source environment was very quiet, and there was no strange movement. He stood there and waited for a long time until the buzzing in his head subsided a little. Then, he began to prepare. His consciousness stood in the spiritual world and looked at the gray ground in front of him that was obviously split into two halves and then sewn back together. He was silent for a while. He squatted down and touched the crack for a while. His expression was strange and hesitant. After a while, he stood up and waved the Netheruin sword in his hand. His face twitched a few times. I'm sure there's something wrong with it. He's crazy. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath. His soul put his hand into his pocket and hesitated for a few seconds. Then, he took another deep breath. His eyes widened, and he threw all the world cores into the source environment like throwing out bait. Clang! The moment the foreign object broke into the source environment, it caused a great disturbance. With a loud boom, the entire source environment boiled, as if a huge force of origin energy and annihilation energy had seen each other. Their eyes turned red when they saw each other, and they fought to the death on the spot. It was truly a battle of life and death. The hundreds of world cores that carried the laws of the two elements realm were wrapped in a thin layer of energy barrier. They were like leaves that were constantly being hit by the waves and kept swaying in the sea. Seizing the opportunity, he raised the hilt of the nether void sword with both hands and stabbed it into the soul fissure. Seizing the opportunity, he raised the hilt of the nether void sword with both hands and stabbed it into the soul fissure. Ouch! Ouch, 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 ouch. F***CK. The sound of the giant sword piercing into the soul crack was too ear-piercing. The pain from the wound was clearer and more obvious than any other injury. The pain that spread rapidly was like watching a saw slowly sawing him from the middle. It was strange and painful. At that time, he cried out in pain, enduring the heart-wrenching pain in his soul. He gritted his teeth and activated the origin energy. With a low roar, he swung the Netherruin sword with all his might and tore open the sewn soul crack. Clang! The earth trembled like thunder. The sky of the soul world was covered by a thick haze again. This time, it spread to places where it could not reach last time, covering most of the light in the soul world. The grayish-white ground began to tremble crazily under the earth-shattering tremors one after another. Suddenly, a huge hole appeared in the ground. Then, the ground continued to move apart under the continuous tremors and shaking. It only stopped when the hole was at least 1,000 feet away. The whole process lasted less than half a minute, but it made him feel as if an entire era had passed. It was so painful that his soul was about to dim. His soul's face was already distorted. Even the act of raising his hand was like that of an old man. He trembled for a long time before he waved his hand and wrapped the turbulent origin energy in a ball of energy. He rubbed it together with the world core and fiercely pulled the two things into his soul. He threw them into the soul crack. Hiss, I'm sure it won't work. Can this thing complete the next step on its own? Just as he finished this step, Yin Nuashing's entire body went soft and collapsed to the ground. His hands pressed against the ground as his entire body trembled nonstop. From time to time, he sucked in a breath of cold air. He was so weak that even his expression had become somewhat stupefied. That was what he thought. But when he saw the chaos below like firecrackers, he knew that this thing would not be able to complete it on its own. Of course, he would need to intervene. But he had just torn open his scar and slashed his soul. The crack continued to expand, bringing him double the pain in all aspects. At this moment, his soul and consciousness were trembling a little. Even if he wanted to intervene, he would have to wait until he finished trembling here. No. I can't do it. My soul has become weak. The people outside who are watching me will definitely know that something is wrong with me. I have to do it before Hui and the others come back to their senses. He rolled his eyes. Even if he added 2 more conditions, he could not say that it would be done immediately. This was not like stir-frying vegetables. While they were not home yet, he could use a fierce fire to stir-fry a few dishes and eat them while he was at it. His thoughts had gone astray. Anyway, he had to do it quickly. His goal was to secretly solve this problem before anyone found out. In the domain of origin, Hui, Sui Feng, and the others discussed for a long time, but still could not figure out how to create a concept-level power. Even if they could not really use it, they could at least borrow it. More than 100 directions of discussion, without exception, were all about the result of being slashed by the chaotic concept body. It was about the same as a collective fart after a long discussion. The group of people lowered their heads, helplessly. The tangled atmosphere and low pressure gathered here made everyone who came to undergo the baptism of origin quietly avoid this domain. Let's not talk about the chaotic concept body. Well, let's not talk about this disgusting thing. Can't we think of another way? Is there really no other way? He covered his forehead with an expression as if his head was about to split open. Is this really the only way? This is not really a way. This is just talking about something that is theoretically possible. But you and I both know that in reality, it is impossible to implement such an unreliable plan. Sui Feng sighed in distress and turned to look at his sister. Sister, do you see anything? Is there really no other way? They had tried, but there was no progress. A large pile of smoking wreckage left on the ground silently told them that their actions were a waste of energy. Sui Feng and the girl in white looked up after a while and shook their heads at the same time. Sui Feng sighed. We can't find any workable plan. When the laws of the seventh primordial realm's environment are integrated, there will be an abnormal interference that is completely unobservable. We can only assume that it is caused by the obstruction of the concept, and it is a very strong resistance. In the past, when the gods forcibly declared the end of the Chaos Era, I'm afraid that the series of measures that they took at that time were also preparations to prevent the chaotic concept body from putting the Chaos Era back. Will we encounter this resistance when the primordial laws are reproduced? I don't know. I've never heard Foam mention it. But I did hear him say that the primordial god had given him directions on how to do it better. If we really want to break through the resistance left behind by the seal of the Chaos Era, there is no way that he would not be told such an important condition, right? Brother Lay stroked his chin and said, "What if Her Eminence forgot about it?" Everyone, oh no, they thought that it was very possible. He coughed dryly and dug out a big hole in the space beside him. Forget it, forget it. Let's not talk about that. Let's explore for a while before Foam wakes up and see if we can find something else. Sway Foam and the rest turned their heads. What's wrong? We dug into the portal for a while and frowned. He then expanded the portal a little and poked his head in. A moment later, he pulled back with a strange look. Do we burn a lot of materials? Everyone was stunned and lowered their heads. The ground was a mess. A large pile of luminous ball wreckage was lying on the ground, telling the tragedy of this place. Swayfong even laughed dryly and swept the wreckage with his foot with a helpless look. Quite a lot. A few hundred? Brother Lay scratched his head awkwardly. Used up. Yes. Huey's expression continued to become weird, but that shouldn't be the case. I remember Maple had left a lot of materials. As he spoke, he poked his head out of the portal again, and his voice became weird. There's nothing hidden in the sea of energy. Wait a minute. Look at the sea of energy. Isn't it quieter? Everyone was stunned for a moment and turned their eyes to the sea of energy in the observer dimension. The sea was calm, stars dotted the surface of the sea, and they could see the reflection of the galaxy in the water. It was too calm. The sea of energy had never been so calm except for the last time when it was drained. It was as if someone had deliberately made it quiet. Huey's face turned pale. Could it be something wrong? Is the sea of energy overflowing? Or did something happen at the resident station? Don't. If something like this happened when Fong is not here, I have to go and apologize. There is nothing wrong with the resident station. The transmission of the concept-level rule fragments is normal. Sui Qing's line of sight jumped to the other end of the permanent residence and looked back and forth for a while. Then, she shifted her gaze to the sea of energy and frowned slightly. Abnormal, the concept-level law fragment disappeared rapidly after entering the sea of energy. What's going on? Sister, can you still see the traces? Can you see where the fragments have gone? I can't find any trace. They have disappeared into thin air. The sea of energy, concept-level rule fragments. This could only be related to Feng himself. But that guy was sleeping well. Hui silently touched his chin, a little doubtful. He found his soul seed. As soon as he took a look, his face suddenly changed. What is Feng doing? Why is his soul so weak that it is about to collapse? Wasn't he just taken away to rest? He was fine just now. I personally saw that he had almost recovered before I could rest assured. After he shouted, everyone turned their attention to the soul transmission. Sure enough, they saw that someone's soul was so weak that it was about to completely dim, and it was unknowingly weakened to such a state. There was no abnormal movement in the middle. They all relaxed when they heard that he was taken away to rest. But now, well, they still underestimated someone's willfulness. He must have moved that part of the fragments away, and he was still doing something sneaky. This guy is itching for a beating. This time, I must beat him up. Hui cursed as he rolled up his sleeves and was about to walk out. Sui Feng and the others thought for a while and rubbed their hands together. Let's go and teach him a lesson. Just as everyone was murderous and ready to teach a lesson to someone who did not take them seriously, an unprecedentedly powerful energy reaction appeared in everyone's senses without warning. In an instant, it penetrated the shield of the domain of origin. Indescribable rules, order, and energy quickly spread out. Wrapped in some kind of extremely sacred energy and rules, it seemed to be able to reach the top. In an instant, it filled the entire domain and descended on everyone. At the same time, everyone's soul trembled. The rules and order suddenly became restless and uncontrollable, startling the energy in the body. The three spontaneously moved and joined forces to crash into the soul. More than half of the shackles that entangled the soul and the divinity of the soul were broken in an instant. Asterisk boom. Asterisk streaks of violent radiance of energy suddenly burst out from the domain of origin. Many people had uncontrollably raised their state to the extreme, as if the seal that had been abruptly worn away had given them a pass to advance. Moreover, they were in such an environment that had suddenly become abnormal and excessively powerful, and under the influence of the abnormal environment, they actually wanted to break through to the next level. It was a complete rampage, completely uncontrollable. This is Suifeng and the others' faces changed drastically. Looking at the shackles that had become much weaker, their eyes were bursting with disbelief. They had already used up all the methods to weaken the shackles a long time ago. Even if they used the power of origin to wear down the shackles, they could only wear them down bit by bit. How could there be a way to suddenly shorten the shackles' duration by a large margin? Huey's eyes widened and his face changed for a while. Seeing that everyone was a little panicked in the domain, he quickly waved his hand and shouted. His voice spread across the domain of origin. Calm down. Calm down. Don't panic. Everyone who can break through to the next level, suppress your restless soul first. Leave the domain of origin and find a place to settle it by yourselves. Everyone else, get used to the drastically changed environment. Before that, don't do anything. Your observer might have done something terrible. Let's wait for a moment before we confirm the situation. The domain of origin, which was slightly chaotic, quieted down after this shout. 70% of the Order warriors sat down and began to adjust themselves. The remaining 30% were flushed red, their bodies trembling as they hurriedly ran out of the domain of origin. They could not hold it in any longer. Not only did this sudden drastic change in the environment reduce the duration of their seal by half, it also forced them to break through their realm. This was an old sin. The difficulty of breaking through a realm like this could be ranked in the top 3. Breaking through in a new environment that was so violent and unstable that they had yet to adapt to it was like a mortal fishing in a stormy sea with huge waves. Beside them were all huge sea monsters that were more than 10,000 feet tall and were eyeing covetously. In this situation, they did not know whether they were going out to fish or delivering themselves to the door to be eaten. It was this overly dangerous situation that made them feel a series of death omens above their souls. They did not even have time to think about what Lord Maple had done to cause such a big commotion. Hui and the others hurriedly rushed out of the door and looked up at the sky. A sacred golden curtain of light descended from the sky. It was as thin as a veil and had a colorful aurora curtain that shrouded the entire observer space. The endless starry sky was dyed with a gorgeous color. The light of billions of stars had never been so bright before. It could light up the entire night sky. That was the light of the beginning, but there was something mixed in it. There was a very strange aura mixed in it, making the entire space a little that was very strange. It was like the aura of the void of the origin. It was their existence that suddenly changed the environmental rules of the entire observer space. This environmental rule could even replace the general environmental rule at this moment. The Great Environment Law is a great environment law that is even stronger than the great environment law of our era. The girl in white looked up and said. Her voice was a little excited, and she felt a little incredulous. He did it. The source rule, he did it. We looked at the starry sky for a while. His eyes hurriedly swept across the starry sky and the aurora curtain. After looking for a while, he finally found a golden and colorful light that soared into the sky. It was very weak, but he was sure that it was the source. Just as he turned around and was about to rush over, a blue and white figure suddenly broke through the space and rushed out. Hui, who was about to run up, was so scared that he hurriedly stopped. Shuang, who rushed out of the spatial door and almost bumped into Hui, was also shocked. But then she hurriedly grabbed Huey's arm and rushed into the spatial door. Come quickly. Little Star's condition is not right. Come quickly. Hui was dragged into the spatial door by Shuang before he could even make a sound. At this time, Sui Feng and the others remembered that little brother Feng had suddenly become extremely weak. Their expressions became serious, suddenly becoming weak and suddenly completing the source rule. If these two things were not related, they would immediately drink the sea of energy dry. The group hurriedly rushed into the spatial door. Just as they entered the door and stood on the platform of the small floating island, they saw a strange scene. Shuang and Little Angel were using all their strength to hug, press, pull. No, they could not recognize what they were doing. In short, they seemed to be using all their strength to control little brother Feng. The two of them, one in front and one behind, used all their strength to entangle little brother Feng's hands and half of his body. Little brother Feng's face was full of pain and difficulty. He struggled crazily as if he was sick from taking drugs. He only needed to explode a little bit of energy to show that he was going to go berserk. Hui Jun was dumbfounded at the side. He had no place to put his hands. Come and help. Ugh. Let's take down Little Star first. Little Angel saw that the reinforcements had arrived on the battlefield and hurriedly shouted at Hui, "Don't just stand there. Come, ugh." As soon as she finished her sentence, she was thrown back by Little Star's brute force that was struggling with all its might. Hui shivered and immediately switched to his guardian form and rushed forward. Brother Lei and Sui Feng moved together with him. The three of them pounced forward like wolves. Shuang, who was still trying her best to control Little Star, was shocked and quickly retreated. The three anxious people rushed forward at the same time, one on the left, one in the middle, and one in the right. Each of them pressed down on a spot and pressed little brother Feng to the ground. They used so much force that little brother Feng was pressed to the ground. He looked like a human trafficker who was about to be sent to prison. Little Angel and Shuang hurriedly went forward. No, forcefully control Little Star will. Crack. As soon as we said that, he saw a 1.5-meter long crack appear on Maple's body from top to bottom. The crack immediately cracked, and pieces of glass fell down. It looked like glass that was about to shatter. Sui Feng and elder brother Lei were startled and subconsciously let go. Then, little brother Feng, who had lost control of his body, slapped the three of them on the chin and sent them flying. When they crawled up, they were dumbfounded. Everyone felt like they had suffered 1,000,000 tons of psychological damage from that slap. Little Angel and Shuang rushed forward to entangle him. Now everyone understood why the action was so strange. It was to restrict his movements, afraid that he would kill himself. They saw Little Angel punching himself in the head twice as soon as he got out of the clamp. Clang, clang, clang. Everyone was dumbfounded. However, they could not restrict him too much. If he struggled forcefully when he could not move, he would tear himself apart from the inside. I don't know why. First, build the domain of origin and try to pacify him with energy. Sui Qing waved to everyone and then stepped forward. Her blue eyes stared at Feng Ling, who was struggling in front of her. She said to Little Angel and Shuang, "Can you try to turn his face around?" Little Angel could not help but smile bitterly. "This is not good. Ugh, I can't hold it." At this time, the girl in white suddenly appeared behind Feng Ling. She pressed his face with both hands and tilted his head so that his face, which was full of pain, was facing Sui Qing. Quick! Sui Qing opened her blue eyes slightly and mobilized the energy of the domain of origin. She stretched out a slender finger and pressed it on Feng Ling's forehead. A faint and indiscernible small star field appeared on Feng Ling's forehead. She whispered softly, "Please calm down." Feng Ling shuddered and slowly stopped struggling. Immediate results. She had just finished murmuring and relaxed a little when she saw that Feng Ling, who had just calmed down a little, had become even more agitated. She was stunned for a moment, and her expression became even more serious. She said in a hurried tone, "Increase the energy. Hui Jun, the Guardian's energy suppression. Coming." Hui, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately jumped up and smashed his shield on the ground. The energy of holy shock suddenly burst out on the ground and merged with the domain of origin. All the energy in the domain was channeled into Feng Ling's soul. Hui then jumped up and punched Feng Ling's head. "Calm down, you idiot." This time, the effect was immediate. Maple, who was still struggling madly, lost all his strength in an instant. He was held by the little angel and schwang and slowly fell to the ground. Seeing this, everyone breathed a sigh of relief and wiped off their sweat. It was really hard to suppress this guy. The last time he turned into a chaos, it took everyone's lives. This time, it was even harder to hold on without killing anyone. "You knocked him out, didn't you?" Sui Feng's eyelids twitched. "Hey, this is pacification, physical pacification," Hui said with his hands on his waist. Everyone was speechless. This was more like physical sleep. Little Angel quickly turned the unconscious little star over. When she was about to check the situation, she was stunned. Hui wiped his sweat and went over to take a look. He immediately jumped up and grimaced in pain. His face was so green that it looked like he had just been beaten up by the Chaos Concept body. F***CK. This guy is so agitated that he's crying. Everyone's face twitched when they heard that. They only felt a chill creeping into their souls, making them feel uncomfortable. Although they were uncomfortable, they still went over to take a look. There were still 2 streaks of tears on Feng Ling's face. Then, they felt even more uncomfortable. They could accept this guy vomiting blood, being half dead, collapsing, and turning into a ball of light. These were all common occurrences for him. They were already used to such scenes. However, to make him cry was probably more difficult than tearing down the chaos void. This super explosive, mobile source of destruction, the representative of the origin heavenly god, an inhuman, without the concept of fear or death, a lunatic who is capable of destroying the entire void of order by himself, while also punching a chaos concept entity, had been tormented to the point of tears for some unknown reason. This was simply... No, the chills were becoming more and more severe. If they tried to empathize with him, they felt as if they would instantly go insane. There could be many reasons why a child of a few years old would squat on the street and cry. A single glance would probably be enough. However, an 8-foot-tall, young girl walking on the street while killing people and breaking through walls while sobbing, there was a huge problem here. "What's going on?" Shuang used her hand to wipe away the tears on his face and tilted her head in confusion. Little Angel glanced at her and shook his head. "You guys don't know either?" Hui expressed that he was dumbfounded once again. "Haven't you guys been watching him closely? How could you not know? It's like this all of a sudden. There were no signs at all." Shuang said softly. She glanced at the colorful sky and exclaimed softly, "Ah." After this thing appeared, little stars suddenly, the group of people was confused. There must be a connection between these two matters. They just didn't know what kind of connection could make this madman so weak. No, the more they thought about it, the more scared and disgusted they felt. It wasn't that they felt disgusted when they saw his weak appearance. Well, this pitiful and weak appearance really had a different taste. Cough, cough, they were disgusted by the reason for torturing him like this. Now, their faces were green. In any case, it was time for various methods to be used to examine him. However, this time, they understood without much examination. This lesion was placed right in front of them. It was impossible not to notice it. The crack in the soul has become more serious. Originally, it only tore half of the soul from top to bottom. Now it is spread to 5/4 of the soul. Sui Qing finished her examination and was puzzled. In the crack, other than the remnant weak concept-level power belonging to the chaotic concept body, the rest is all origin energy. The concept-level scar has been forcefully expanded. No, wait a minute, it's not just that. There are other auras inside. This seems to be the aura of the source environment. Everyone's expression became even more strange. What was this? Not only did he open up the scar, but he also stabbed it, and it was a stab to the soul. Now they understood that the pain on the body was far less exaggerated than the pain on the soul. This stab, damn. The girl in white suddenly raised her head. The source law, I understand. This is the truth of him successfully recreating the source law. The concept level power missing from the fusion of the world core, the concept level scar, and the source law is his essence. The slight hint made everyone react quickly. Their faces turned pale. This was really a little nauseating. This was a little too advanced for the life forms of order. This was a little, not too good. They might have to go. Someone made a retching sound. Everyone's face turned green in an instant. They hurriedly ran outside. They had to vomit for a while. We could not help but cover his face and mutter, "This guy tortured himself a little," thinking about how he had been torturing himself all this time. There wasn't much difference. It was just that this time he had gone too far. He even dared to provoke a concept-level wound. His soul was about to be completely split in half. For them who were trapped in this realm, no matter what kind of breakthrough they made, they had to pay a price. Yes, pay a price. It was not hard work. Hard work alone was not enough. They had reached the point where they had to pay a price for every step they took. It was as if they were exchanging their lives for the qualification to continue moving forward. Although everything had a price, this kind of price was too ridiculous, right? Chapter 1947. The source law shrouded the entire observer space along with the light of origin. It was a scene that reflected the chaos-era environment. It was mysterious and dazzling, like a dream waiting for everyone to explore. Its significance and value was no less than that of a pioneer discovering a new continent. However, at this moment, the source of this phenomenon did not have any feelings of surprise. A group of people felt disgusted and hurriedly left because they empathized too much with it. The few people who stayed behind all had uncomfortable expressions on their faces. They looked at the guy who had fainted and was about to kill them, feeling uneasy. We checked Maple's condition again and sighed to Shuang Shuang and Little Angel, who looked guilty. Well, it's not your fault. This guy's nature is hard to change. Plus, he's obviously obsessed. It's hard for you to stop him. I just think that with you two around him, he should be a little more cautious. He won't completely ignore himself and kill himself. The effect is not very obvious. Phew. Let's carry him to the sanctuary of creation. The bed there's been arranged. Sui Feng said with a strange and, in short, very strange expression. Although I don't know if it's effective on this concept-level wound of the second wound, we got everything we can. Let's take Brother Maple there first. Little Angel nodded silently. Just as she was about to stand up with Little Star in her arms, the latter suddenly bounced up and exclaimed, "Ouch! It hurts!" The movement, like a zombie, startled everyone. Their eyes were glazed. Yin Nuashing sat up and held her head. Suddenly, she felt that the atmosphere around her was not right. She opened her eyes and saw Hui, Sui Feng, and Sui Feng looking at her with a strange expression. She suddenly decided to maintain a confident attitude. You guys are here. It seems that it's really a success. After a lot of hard work, I've finally finished this thing. Wait a minute. Ignoring the stunned expressions of the group, Yin Nuashing pressed her forehead and searched her soul for a while. As expected, she pulled out a spherical creation. It looked like a model of a stellar system. In the center was a sphere that emitted a colorful luster, just like the sun. Around it were 30 to 40 spheres that looked like stars. The orbits ranged from small to large, from horizontal to vertical, from circular to elliptical, and from irregular. The entire object looked like a flower. Its overall diameter was only about 1 meter. If one ignored the weird orbits, it was indeed a mini-model of a stellar system. Here, the carrier of the source law. This time, it's a real concept-level creation. But it's of this level. Only this level of power was used in the creation, but the body does not carry this thing. After all, it's just a set of large-scale environmental laws. As he spoke, he threw the thing to Hui and continued. Well, this thing can be used as a world core or domain-type creation. The sanctum of creation, the sanctum of creation, and the sanctum of origins can all be responsible for creating this thing. It should take some time, but not too long. When you have enough, deal with it as planned. Arrange it in the frontline world. You guys can arrange the personnel transfer and so on. And the observer space is now covered by this large-scale environmental law. I seem to have thrown all the energy released after the formation into the observer space, so it's replaced directly. Other than that, there's no other effect. Let me think about it again. There shouldn't be any problems in the short term. Let me know if there's anything wrong with it after you guys try it out. It won't be able to use concept-level power even after it's made, unless I'm suicidal and tear it apart. Yep, it'll be easy to adjust it. Yin Nuashing blabbered a lot, then yawned and stretched. She tilted her head and rubbed it under the wings of the little angel. She pulled the two wings over her body and said with a satisfied expression, "That's it then. It's done. I can finally have a good sleep." Hui suddenly came back to his senses and threw the source law's carrier to Sui Qing. He stomped on the ground, and the entire floating island shook. He gathered his energy in his dantian and roared at the top of his lungs, "Give it to me! Wait a minute!" Yin Nuashing's body trembled slightly, and she quickly pulled the wings of the little angel to cover her ears. She muttered, "I can't hear you. I can't hear you. I'm asleep. Don't worry about me." The little angel was speechless. She pulled him out from under her wings and sat him on the ground. She snorted at him and said, "I'm not going to cover for you this time. If you don't give me an explanation, don't think about doing anything today." Yin Nuashing scratched her head awkwardly. She shrank her neck in the face of the judgmental eyes of the people around her. After a moment, she thought about it. Since she had already done what she wanted, there shouldn't be any problems. So, she became confident again and shrugged nonchalantly. "There's nothing to explain. You guys should be able to guess." "Oh, you guys want to know the details, right? Then I'll explain it in detail. To put it simply, I tore open the concept-level scar with a crack. Then, I threw all the world cores into the source law environment, causing the source law environment to go berserk. I mixed the source law environment with the world core, then threw the source law environment and the world core into the concept-level scar. With a clang, the source law environment and the world core were pressed into the fissure, and with a clang, I disassembled the source law environment and reconstructed it to cover the entire concept-level scar. Then, I used the connection between the source law environment and the world core to forcefully seize control of the concept-level scar. I borrowed the concept-level power that leaked out from the fissure and mixed the three together to beat it up, omitting a million words in the process. "Yes, it's done." As Yin Nuashing spoke, she pulled her hair and laughed dryly. Although the remaining 300,000 world cores were all scrapped, it was worth it. It was worth it. Huey's face was livid. He looked at Feng as if he was looking at an unknown object. However, Feng knew that the atmosphere was solemn, and he also knew what kind of mentality they were looking at him with, but he didn't take it seriously at all. He guessed that Feng must have done what he wanted, so he didn't care about anything. Feng didn't have the self-awareness of being scrutinized as a prisoner at all. Yin Nuashing sensed that the group did not intend to let him off so easily. His face was filled with helplessness as he revealed a bitter smile. "All right, everything has a price. The concept grade scar will completely heal in a few days. Once it completely disappears, there will be no other way. Furthermore, the outcome will be the same regardless of whether it is a few days earlier or a few days later. There won't be any other way for me to avoid this disaster just because I'm dragging it out." With an indifferent smile on her face, she pressed her hands on her crossed calves, and her body swayed gently from side to side. "Besides, I can't think of any better way. In the beginning, I didn't think of maybe there's a better way. There's no such thing. The road is very narrow, especially this kind of road. If I can squeeze my way through without any major problems, it's already considered a success." Hui and the others were speechless. In any case, they couldn't argue with Yin Nuashing in this regard. Yes, they couldn't argue with him at all. Yin Nuashing was willful, stubborn, and didn't take himself seriously. Although he wasn't arrogant enough to think that everything he did was right, when the results had already appeared, He basically believed that what he did was right. Although he could agree with the existence of other paths, he didn't care whether there was a better way in this kind of situation where there was no need to repeatedly explore it. This was because this was a false proposition. Who didn't know how to give advice after the horse's back? At this time, the road in front of them was still shrouded in darkness and fog, and time was of the essence. They didn't have the time to think about how to do it better. They could only take it step by step. If there was a need to repeat the operation, they would talk about it. If there wasn't, then it was over. As Feng Luoxing said, the concept-level scar would be gone in 2 days. What should they do then? Should they look for the chaos concept body and get stabbed again? Looking at the complicated expressions on everyone's faces, Yin Nuoxing shrugged. Well, it seems that you guys have figured out the whole thing. If you want to scold me, just scold me in your heart. I can't hear you anyway. Everyone was speechless. This guy really deserved a beating. If it wasn't for the fact that he was as fragile as glass, they really wanted to teach him a lesson on the spot. It's useless to think about it here. Hurry up and settle your things. I'll ask you guys for your review and thoughts on the use of the product in a few days. This report is very important. Hui gritted his teeth and looked at Feng Luoxing. After a while, he snorted heavily and turned to leave while cursing. Let's go. Let's not care about him anymore. Business is more important. Sui Feng and the others did not know whether to laugh or cry. They were supposed to be the dominant party, with the aura of a judge who had done something wrong. But in the end, they could only leave with their tails between their legs. There was no point arguing about this topic. This guy did not listen to scolding or teaching. He knew the whole thing better than anyone else and had already weighed everything. What should they say? It was also because he knew that they knew that he was well aware that they could not teach him a lesson at all. So what? Let them make a scene and scold him? He was no different from an unreasonable hooligan. They couldn't bring themselves to do anything to him and treated him like a fool as well. No. After all, this was not something that could be solved by scolding. If scolding worked, there would be no war in the void. On one hand, they advised him to cherish his life. On the other hand, they watched him charge forward and hurt himself. On the other hand, they enjoyed the results that he risked his life to bring. In the end, they still scolded him in front of his face. The chain of contradictions was closed, and there was no link that could be broken by external forces. In the end, they could only watch him charge here and there, with a toothache and a headache, while patting their chest and saying a few words in an incomprehensible tone. It was impossible to scold him. He was not in the position to do so. Waving his hand and watching Sui Feng and Hui leave, Yin Nuoxing yawned. He squinted his eyes and touched the side. When he touched the little angel, he habitually fell down and rested his head on her lap. Half of his body was curled up in her wings. He smiled faintly without opening his eyes. Angry, the little angel murmured, folded her wings, and covered him. She nodded. Yes, very angry. Yin Nuoxing smiled helplessly. He opened his eyes slightly and looked to the side. Shuang saw him looking at her. She thought for a moment and put on an angry expression. She turned her head and murmured in a low voice, "Angry, I will ignore you for half an hour." Idiot, you could have asked us to share some of the pain. Yin Nuoxing did not know whether to laugh or cry. Thinking about that level of pain, ugh, he did not know how his body was feeling. Anyway, his consciousness was in so much pain that he was rolling on the ground. He was rolling on the ground while smashing the ground. His spiritual world was torn into pieces. Although it would be better to let them share some of the pain, but forget it. The pain was secondary. The main reason was that he had touched a concept-level wound. He had the source energy to protect himself. It would not be that bad if he were to be rescued. But for the two of them, forget it. The risk was not easy to estimate. He was afraid that something bad would happen. Yin Nuoxing stretched out his long hand and pressed on Shuang's head. He sighed and murmured to himself, "Soon, there is not much left. There is not much left to do. There is not much left that needs to be done in exchange for a result with our lives." Shuang took his hand, leaned down gently on his shoulder, and whispered, "You can borrow more of our power. As long as it can be used, you can tell us no matter what the problem is." He could not help but chuckle. "Of course, I have never worried about using your power. Whether it was in the past, the present, or the future, it will not change. I will not be polite." The little angel mumbled and stood up with her wings wrapped around the two of them. She held little Star in her arms and flew to the creation sanctum together. As she flew, she muttered, "You should lie down for a while this time, right?" Yin Nuashing blinked. "Well, it's over for the time being. As for the follow-up, we will talk about it later. I really can't move much now. I am afraid that I will really split into two lunatics." The little angel and Shuang looked at his soul that was about to completely split into two halves. They both felt that it was a statement. The formation of the source law meant that the void frontline was about to usher in a second huge change. It was a change that could be said to be a collective sublimation. The things that needed to be done increased by hundreds of baskets. That's right, things would never end. There were things that could never be done in this lifetime. It was impossible to slack off. Just one thing thrown out by the guy at the top of the source law was enough to make the entire void frontline spin like a high-speed top. As it spun, it could suck the entire void frontline in and spin with it. The origin realm had things that the origin realm needed to do, and the origin realm had obstacles that the origin realm needed to overcome. Looking at the current situation, the origin realm people were the busiest. After all, the origin realm people made up 80% of the order warriors on the void frontline. If they were not stuck at obstacles, they were stuck at obstacles, and then there were those who were stuck at major obstacles. Divinity carriers were something that could be used by everyone, but it would take a lot of time. Based on the laws of the void frontline that were not covered by the source law, it would take around 4 eras to pull out a primeval from zero. That was actually a very good time. Divinity carriers would appear according to the nature of each life. The time required to accumulate them was different, and the fluctuation was quite large. For eras was the lower limit. As for the upper limit, if it was added by half, the unlucky ones would have doubled it. Otherwise, the void frontline would not still have 80% of the origin realm people after 5 eras. If everyone could be calculated in an ideal state, the void frontline would have been full of primeval people long ago. That was a digression. The greatest difficulty for the origin realm people was just like what had been said before. They were stuck at the threshold of primeval, and they could only rely on time to grind it out until the end of time. With the existence of the source law, many methods to reach primeval that could not be used in the past could be brought out from the dusty box. There was no need to worry about that. At this moment, the group of second-generation successors took the initiative to hold up the banner of guides and began to get down to business. As a result, the entire front line emptied out. Only a small portion of the spatial patrol remained behind. Most of them had gone to break through. After all, coming in contact with the source law for the first time seemed to reduce the duration of the seal by half. As a result, whether it was origin realm or primeval realm, there were people who needed to break through. Breaking through as soon as the time came had always been their goal. Just like that, when they created a world dedicated to the source law, they locked up all the warriors of order who could break through. They were not allowed to go out before they broke through. 80% of the warriors of order who had been chased in were origin realm cultivators who had reached primeval realm, so it would probably take them some time. But I didn't expect to lose so many people all of a sudden. Now, other than those who stay behind to maintain the frontline defense, only a small portion of people are left to carry out missions in the Order Void. Suifeng looked at the world of light that was tied up by all kinds of fancy things and could not help but sigh. I didn't expect so many people to break through by letting those who had less than half the duration of the seal and those who were qualified to reach primeval realm use the method from the previous era to break through. Speaking of which, our seal seems to be almost worn down. We will be able to break through after a while. I wonder if we can reach high primeval this time? I think we still need to go through another seal. After all, it's the threshold from intermediate to high primeval. It may not be that simple. Brother Lei shook his head. Compared to this, how long will it take to make a carrier of the source law? The girl in white answered calmly, half a day. Everyone. Huh? No way. A certain observer worked so hard to make this. In the end, it only took half a day for the 3 constructors to make one. This. The beginning is very important. Don't think it's a waste of effort. Sui Feng explained softly, the difficulty of making a carrier of the source law is that it needs concept class power as a catalyst. It does not carry concept class power itself. Moreover, whether it is the sanctum of creation, the temple of creation, or the sanctum of origins, all of them have a small portion of concept class power. It's just that we can't use, mobilize, or touch it. But they can. They create order creations by copying, recording, and reproducing. As long as they have the corresponding conditions, it is not difficult to recreate an identical order creation. The difficulty is that we can't use concept class power. Maple has risked his life to touch that little bit of concept class power. It's this seemingly insignificant condition that made him risk his life. Hui sighed and waved his hand to dispel the gloomy atmosphere. Now, everyone could not help but feel downcast when they talked about that idiot. It's convenient that the carrier of the source law can be made in half a day. Half a day is enough to cover the entire frontline world. At first, I thought that if it takes a long time to recreate one, I would let everyone in the frontline world squeeze the world lights into a dense pile, and then let a carrier of the source law cover a region with the greatest coverage. But now it seems that there's no need to move those spheres around, just saturate them. This is just the foundation. There are still many things to do. Sui Feng was busy fiddling with a large pile of crystal balls that recorded all kinds of information. This time, it's a change of blood in the void frontline. After all, it's a change of the rules of the environment. We have to make the best use of everything. Brother Lei, who was thinking about that, but had no idea, quickly changed his target when he heard what Sui Feng said. For example, the adjustments to the order creations. Due to the change in the environment, the rules and order related to the order creations would need to be adjusted as well. After the adjustment, even if they were brought to a weaker level of rules, it wouldn't affect them. No. The only thing that would be affected would be the rate of energy recovery. First, it would be raised to a level and then brought back to a weaker level of rules. However, their own system is already quite complete, to the point where they are self-produced and self-consumed. Furthermore, even if they can't recover, it wouldn't be a big deal. After all, the energy towers are basically consumables. Although they are now developing in the direction of sustainability, it doesn't change their position. As for the energy recovery of the order domain, you don't have to worry about it. As the strength increases, the energy consumption increases, the range expands, and the rate of recovery increases as the range expands. If that doesn't work, you could just throw out a few hundred new energy cores. TSK. I seem to have said a lot of nonsense. Judging from the rules of the environment, even if it's much worse than the source rules, it wouldn't affect the order creations created under the source rules too much. Then it's fine, we don't have to worry about it. We just have to adjust the various order creations under the source rules. Every aspect is maxed out. Sui Feng quickly replied. His words left everyone silent for a while. We could not help but say, "You're talking about the problem that the busy man has to deal with, that seems to be..." Sui Feng coughed dryly and quickly changed the topic when he saw that everyone's expressions had become a little gloomy. "No, not just that, there's something else. We don't have to trouble you, Brother Maple. We can handle it." He cleared his throat and changed the topic by 90 degrees. It's about dealing with the chaos concept body. When you asked us for a way to prevent the chaos corruption of the chaos concept body, we really couldn't do anything. After all, the special methods of our era require the strength of rules. That's one of the conditions. As for the other, it's about the origin energy and the origin rules. The latter can be solved through the origin baptism, but the former has always been out of our reach. Now that Brother Maple has taken out the source rules, some things can be used. Although it's not as good as the defense against the chaos concept body set up by the Venerables themselves, it can still be used. At this time, it should be the best. I'll leave it to you, Hui Jun. Oh, right. Speaking of which, I remember another part. It's also related to the strength of rules. Sui Feng quickly rummaged through the pile of crystal balls for a while. After a while, he picked up one of the crystal balls and looked at it. He then showed it to everyone. It's also related to the realm of order. It's a method to deal with part of it. It's similar to the order battle array strengthening method. It uses an individual's life as the standard target. It can strengthen everyone's connection with the realm of order, and at the same time, strengthen the realm of order itself. It's much stronger than our current rigid method of connecting with the realm of order. Most importantly, there's no limit to the range. There's no need to worry about running too far away from the realm of order and losing support. We held the crystal ball and looked at it. After listening to Su Eifeng's explanation, he was silent for 2 seconds. I think Maple and Green will like this. It means that they can charge forward recklessly without worrying that the rest of the team can't keep up with them. They also don't have to worry about their strength suddenly weakening, and they can use Peerless to sweep the world's end. That's true. Suifeng spat out a mouthful of energy saliva. He shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Actually, this is also necessary. However, we didn't meet the requirements before, so it's pointless to mention it. Necessary? You mean it has to work with the Fortress of Origin's realm of order? We could occasionally think quickly. That's right. The Fortress of Origin's realm of order is too powerful. By spreading out through the various nodes, it can forcibly strengthen all the realms to its level. That is, it can cover the entire void without weakening. However, relying on weak origin energy and the origin law's connection cannot unleash 100% of the realm of order's power. Back then, we had the order battle array and the net of order to assist us, so we didn't have to worry about this problem. Now that we don't have it, it's a little. Suifeng scratched his head helplessly. This thing can make up for a lot of our shortcomings, but, well, even if it's making up for it, it won't be able to reach 100%. Wait a minute. I thought of a very serious problem. He looked up abruptly as an idea came to his mind. With this thing, wouldn't Maple drag the entire realm of order when he enters the rule, order, and energy form? Everyone's face twitched. If that violent maniac were to go all out in this most oppressive power form, he could probably drag the entire realm of order up by 3 or 4 levels. Then, Maple's control time would probably become the suppression time of order. Suifeng followed the thought and paused. But that's if we have the guts to take a walk in the origin, chaos, and take a bath. So, do we have the guts? It's not the normal origin, chaos, but the origin, chaos, pseudo-advanced primeval power form. It's a powerful origin shock and chaos shock that can continuously cause great damage to the 8th heaven of the primeval era. It has various effects such as shaking one's brain, tearing one's soul, disintegrating order, splitting one's form, shattering one's structure, and so on. It's a combination of both. Probably. Everyone was speechless. Even if they had the energy to identify them, they did not want to rush in for a walk. The origin, chaos, was an unreasonable attack, and its motive was to tear down the entire void. They had to hide behind the realm of order, but they still had to tremble in the face of that tsunami. When the time comes, they could just use the energy towers to support them. Well, that would do. We took the last one as a joke. He recorded the previous matter and looked back at it carefully. His face was troubled. So troublesome. Why is it getting more and more complicated? When there are more things, it's so complicated that I can't even make sense of them. In the first place, these things change from simple parts to more complicated parts. Suifeng spread his hands and breathed a sigh. After all, simple things are sometimes not functional enough. Like Brother Maple said, the attack power is not enough. Simple things are easy to use, but they might not be more useful than complicated things. Just look at the Staff of Origins and the Staff of Creation. Are those things simple? When Minter and the gods told me about them, they all said that it's too complicated and troublesome, and that it can only be done step by step, but it's very useful. Of course, how could it not be useful when it was specifically used to open the heads of chaos concept entities? As they listened, they recorded a lot of things and categorized them. They had to hand it to Maple, they had to deal with it, they had to do it immediately, and they had to do it after a while. Counting them all, they had a few hundred baskets of things to do. Brother Lay suddenly clapped his hands. It seems that we can create new creations of order. With such a powerful principle like the primordial order, it would be a waste not to use it. How about this? We'll create new creations of order and hand them to Brother Maple so that he can strengthen and adjust them. We almost dropped the crystal ball in his hand. Weren't they just discussing how to make everyone break through the realm in the beginning? Why were there more and more things? Chapter 1948. A complete makeover meant that 80% of the items would be new after the job was done. Even if they appeared familiar, they would not be the same thing they once knew. Furthermore, the void front lines were changing rapidly. Basically, once the specific plans were finalized, for example, Maple had just tossed out a sphere to indicate that it was a new generation of weapons. He would arrange it where it would be arranged, or arrange everything. As long as it was not overly complicated, the void front lines would be filled with spheres the next day, extending from the node city to the realm of order. It was as if the world had changed drastically when they woke up, and everyone was still frozen where they were, unable to keep up with the pace of change. After waking up, they were abandoned by the world, unable to keep up with evolution. Well, that was how it was described. In fact, there were no order warriors who could not keep up. The void front lines had undergone countless changes of various sizes, and they had plenty of ways to keep everyone up. If they could not keep up, they could just drag them along. It did not matter if they had a head or a person attached to their waistband. It was just that one person could not carry too many people, or the waistband would be a little heavy and too long. Then, after some thought, he felt that Maple's waistband would be ridiculously long. Of course, with Maple's personality, he would be more than happy to stuff everyone into a world radiance, and then hang it in his soul and drag them along. He would have the presence of an army of 10,000 when he stepped out alone. It was a true army of 10,000. He was an army of one, and could even hang a void defensive line in his soul. That was digressing. It was purely because he had done too much recording that he felt a little dizzy after arranging things, and perhaps a little hypoglycemic. His brain was not working too well. That's true, but didn't you just throw everything to Model Worker Little Green? It's not that tiring to arrange things, is it? Suifeng rolled his eyes at a certain unreliable Huijun. It's tiring to arrange things too. If I leave everything to Little Green, it would be even more inefficient. Wouldn't I have to divide things up one by one? We had a lot of things in our discussion before, and it's not like you weren't there. Hui grinned as he looked at the crystal balls piled up on the ground and a dozen or so hills on the floating island. His face twitched. He subconsciously moved his feet and touched the crystal ball beside his feet. The hill in front of him fell down, and even the hills a few meters away fell down together. He gritted his teeth and couldn't help but kick the rest of the crystal ball hills to fall down as well. I just finished. Suifeng's face twitched, and he rubbed his hair with his palm. Whatever. It's done anyway, it doesn't matter. He sighed softly and turned to throw the crystal spheres away from the edge of the floating island. They fell into the sea of energy 100 meters below, splashing a series of water. Well, there was no point in doing that since it was just destroying them. The information had been recorded anyway, and there was no point in keeping them. I just didn't expect it to take 4 to 5 days just to deal with these. Are you done with your part? Huijun lay flat on the ground, looking up at the Temple of Origin behind him and sighed. Well, I guess I've adjusted everything according to my usual and favorite defense plan, combined with the defense against chaos you gave me, and finally adjusted according to the source laws. It's not that hard to think. Just follow the steps step by step. There are only 4 to 5 steps of trial and error, which means it would take a lot of time since all the conditions are complete. Moreover, if it's possible, I hope to try it later and adjust it again to see if there are any loopholes or to test if the hardcore defense is lacking. But if it's the latter, I can only think of ways to strengthen it. But is it really going to work? Huiting sat up with a troubled expression. The defense against the chaos concept body. I still couldn't sleep at night after dealing with it. I sat up and thought about it for a long time, and the only thing I could see from the countless defense plans is that they are weak. Suifeng was also troubled at the mention of that. The effect is definitely not as good as ours, and even if we had that level of defense back then, we would still be tormented by the chaos domain and chaos corruption of the chaos concept body. So what we could do now? It can only be said to make up for the gap in our defense. As for how much, it's hard to say, but it's definitely better than rushing in without any preparation. What if we just hold on for 1 minute, or 1 second, and Brother Maple wouldn't. Are you saying that Maple would smash the chaos domain? Hui Ting smiled bitterly and patted his head. Seeing Sui Feng nod stiffly, Hui Ting smiled even more bitterly. I don't think it's possible. I'm not saying that to discourage you, but, I think it's really difficult. It's just difficult. Can the power of a pseudo-high-tier premier smash the chaos domain? If he's in the form of rule, order, and energy, and his power is at its limit. Sui Feng stroked his chin, blue starlight flashing crazily in his eyes. Huiton was very excited to see how quickly he was thinking, and then he spread out his hands. It's not possible. That's the answer I expected. Being able to break the chaos domain of the chaos concept body means that there's a possibility of fighting the chaos concept body to a draw. Unless the chaos concept body in the underworld can't simply go out of the underworld, and its power hasn't recovered to its limit, like what the gods said. Otherwise, it's a little unreliable. Sui Feng exhaled in distress. But there's no need to rush. Didn't Brother Maple say that he's far from prepared? He hasn't prepared everything, and we're the ones doing the work after the source law takes form. He must have a lot of things to adjust himself. When he recovers, he'll definitely use the source law to its limit and forcefully increase his combat power by a few levels. Maybe he'll be able to catch up to the chaos concept body. It's just that this matter can only be dealt with forcefully. If we can't break or resolve the chaos domain of the chaos concept body, we'll just be sending our men away for nothing. Speaking of the greatest force on the void front lines, Brother Feng is the only one who could use it. Phew. I'll look through the relics left by the gods later. I'll also check out the 3 buildings and see if there's any additional effect that could increase our power, even if it's temporary. Hui was speechless. It felt like a fantasy, no matter how he thought about it. The first legatees and those pinnacle primeval beings also said that they could catch up to the heavenly god of origins, but didn't they cause trouble when they attacked the chaos concept body with the power of a superior node and many intermediate nodes? Well, that's the truth. Let's not talk about such depressing things for now. We'll see what Maple can do in the remaining time. There's still a lot of unfinished business, and perhaps we can look forward to the combat power of the Void frontline after everyone's qualitative change. Maple himself had said that a strike that gathered all the power of the Void frontline, unleashed with the Staff of Creation, should be the limit of power that the Realm of Order could reach at the moment. Now, all we have to do is wait for all the changes to be completed before testing the limit. I understand the reason. Basically, he's tormenting himself without holding back, collapsing immediately after he's done and entering an emergency recovery state. After he recovers, he'll definitely torment himself as if his life depended on it, and then collapse again. Phew, that's also the big idiot's normal behavior. The core of the Sanctuary of Creation appeared to be a 10-meter square room, deliberately shrunk to the smallest possible size. There was a large bed in the room, and in the middle of the room were chairs, tables, and dressing tables that were rarely used. There was nothing else. The core used to create creations was next door, and it was deliberately divided into 2 parts since it was a specially made bed. Many energies flowed in this space, all of which were origin energies and rules. It was not just the big idiot's own, but also Sui Feng's and the others. It seemed to be an attempt to speed up the big idiot's recovery, but there was no telling how effective it was. Yuan Kong, the little angel, and the others sat on the chairs and turned to look at the person lying quietly on the bed. Yuan Kong sighed inwardly. Lately, I've been seeing the big idiot lying down more and more. In the past, when there were frequent battles of extreme intensity, he was always hanging in the void as the morning star, and his light never dissipating. Now that he's in the logistics department, he's running to the bed every day. He's always being carried in, and every time he's carried in, it's equivalent to him collapsing once, depending on the situation. Although I've long heard from the big idiot that the reappearance of the rules of origin is very complicated and troublesome, and I've expected him to lie down for a while after it's done, I really didn't expect him to torture himself to this extent. Yuan Kong turned her head and looked at her sister, who had a calm expression. Sister, aren't you going to help him? The little angel sighed. There's no way to speed up the recovery of concept-level wounds. Well, the origin energy can speed it up a little, but that's all. Now, Shuang and I will each stabilize half of his soul. But you don't have to worry too much. His condition is much better now. The original worry that the second injury would slow down the recovery speed did not happen, and there are no more strange things happening. We just need to wait for time to pass. Yao Guang got up from the chair and went to the bedside to carefully check on Brother Feng's condition. It seems to be half-healed. It's been 10 days since the appearance of the rules of origin, and he's almost half-healed. Is the recovery speed faster than before? It's a little faster, but not as fast as you think. The second injury this time is mainly caused by himself. It's a concept-level wound that's entangled with the origin energy, so that part of the recovery is faster. The little angel softly explained, the wounds left behind by the chaos concept body had already mostly healed before he dealt with the source law, so it's not a big deal. Now, the most important thing is to heal the second wound, so it looks like it will be much faster. It's also because he sensed that he's almost recovered. Once he recovers, he might not be able to touch that part of the power again, so the big idiot took the risk without thinking. Yuan Kong breathed a sigh of relief and stretched out her arms and legs on the chair. What a helpless idiot. Idiot. Shuang pinched the 10-centimeter-tall figure on the table like an ice sculpture and blinked her deep blue eyes. She saw Yao Guang with one knee on the bedside and bent over to poke Little Star's face. The two were very close to each other. Shuang was shocked and quickly said, Yao Guang, don't get too close to him. You'll... Before she could finish her sentence, Yao Guang let out a cry of surprise as he was dragged under the blanket. Little Angel and Yuan Kong turned around at the same time. Yuan Kong was slightly taken aback when she saw this scene. Big idiot, did you sleep too much? He can still pull people into the quilt when he's asleep. Shuang's pretty face showed a helpless expression. Little Star is in a coma. He's not in a good state. He can't sleep well and likes to look for things to hug. This helpless tone, this slightly helpless expression, and the expression that seemed to empathize with him startled Yuan Kong. Could it be that you... The little angel glanced at Shuang, who was laughing dryly and teased. Before you came, Shuang had been acting as Little Star's quilt and doll for 5 days. Yuan Kong was dumbfounded. You really let him pester you for 5 days? Shuang shrunk her neck and laughed dryly. Little Star is weak. I dare not. Ugh, use force. Yuan Kong made a non-committal sound. There were many ways to break free from the hug, even if one did not use force. It was not as difficult as one imagined. This was obviously just a way of saying, maybe Shuang did not intend to. She seemed to understand. She immediately looked at Shuang with a suspicious gaze. Her gaze lingered on Shuang's slightly blushing face for a while. Then she said, Oh, I see. You also want to call yourself a family member in the family area, right? Shuang immediately shrank her head behind the little angel's wings like an ostrich. This was too easy to guess. No, this thought did not need to guess at all. Yuan Kong and the little angel were speechless. They did not know when Shuang had this idea. At first, they really did not know. At first, they just thought that she was a little girl who was afraid of strangers. After all, she was kidnapped and unfamiliar with the place. How did she become like this without knowing it? Yao Guang raised his trembling hand. I'm not going to hang here for 5 days, right? Yuan Kong had just taken a sip of tea. When she heard that, she turned her head and spat out a torrent of water 5 meters away from her mouth. She was speechless. You teleported yourself out. Oh, of course. If you want to hang there for a few days, that's not a problem. It's your own wish. Yao Guang thought for a moment. Then he put his hand down and pulled the quilt. Then I'll hang there for 2 days. Yuan Kong. There was still room for negotiation. Did this girl also want to change her identity? All right. Since the big idiot is fine, I'll go out first. There seems to be something. Yuan Kong sighed and stood up. She looked at her sister and Shuang and asked, "Don't you want to do anything?" At this time, when the source law is covering. "We're doing it," the little angel replied calmly. "Everything is going as usual. We're not wasting any time. Staying by Little Star's side will be faster. Everything will be faster, whether it's breaking through the realm or grinding away the seal." Shuang nodded. Very soon. The seal is about to disappear. Just put in a little more effort. Yes. Yao Guang immediately adjusted to a comfortable sleeping position. He raised his hand. "Then I'll hang here for a while. Anyway, the Void Patrol team can't be formed in the near future. Dao Tian went to inherit his legacy, right? Qingyu went to break through as well. I'll just stay here. Oh, comfortable. It's over. He's fallen." Yuan Kong sighed and shook her head. She sat down and continued to make tea while muttering. Shuang tilted her head and said to her, "Aren't you going out?" "Oh, I'm not going. It's fine here." The little angel couldn't help but smile. He's fallen too. The atmosphere here is indeed better than other places. Aside from the influence of the source law and the big idiot's origin energy, there's also a subtle aura. Well, it's not easy to describe. It's very subtle. It's like I don't feel it very often. It's a little unfamiliar. Yuan Kong's gaze swept across the room. It's coming from Brother Feng. Yao Guang raised his hand and waved at them. That subtle feeling is very unfamiliar, but the aura it contains is very familiar. It's the aura of the source law. The little angel explained. After Little Star began to explore his own path, his consciousness would often inadvertently return to the source law. Every time he returns to the source law, the aura of the source law on his body would become stronger. The progress seems good, but as for the specifics, you'll have to ask him to find out. Yuan Kong tilted her head. Strange, but isn't the source law the same? Why are there two different auras? They don't seem to be the same. The names are similar, but they point to different goals. Shuang shook her head and helped to answer. The source law that Little Star is recreating now should correspond to if the Great Yuan realm hadn't split into 8 parts. The environmental law would be like this. That's the case. As for the source law, although it also has the word source, the source law and the source void that we commonly use refer to the place at the bottom of the void. The two are different. The source law corresponds to the environmental law at the beginning of the Great Yuan realm, the chaotic era. However, that era is too far away from us. Many things have happened in the Great Yuan realm, and it has been split into 8 parts. It has already undergone earth-shattering changes. The environmental law is also managed by each primordial realm, so it lacks a certain characteristic. Even the strength of the law itself has naturally declined. The environmental law of the 8 primordial realms is the environmental law, and the source law is the source law. Their characteristics are different. Shuang lowered her head and thought for a moment. After a moment, she felt that she had said something right. She nodded seriously. Yes, that's what Little Star said. One refers to the changed version of the environmental law at the beginning of the Great Yuan realm, and the other refers to the environment at the bottom. Yuan Kong pinched her cheeks in distress. There are too many things and too many names. I will remember them all one day. Little Angel glanced at her and whispered, I have already remembered them all. Yuan Kong laughed dryly. When a special situation in the room was mentioned, she suddenly thought of a problem. Speaking of which, the Guardian and Sui Feng have been discussing a topic recently. They seem to be discussing who will be the first to reach the high level of Yuanshi in the Void frontline. After the Source Law came out, everyone relaxed a little. Well, no, they felt a little relieved. Yao Guang reached out and hugged Big Brother Feng tightly. Even though she knew that the 4 of them wouldn't disturb him even if they yelled and screamed, she still purposely whispered, even though everyone knows that we're still very, very far away from our goal, we still feel a little relieved. That's why we could discuss such harmless topics. I understand this atmosphere. It's not that everyone is relaxed. They just feel a little more relaxed because they have found a clearer way out and a clearer goal in a short period of time. That's why they feel a little relaxed. It should be because the psychological burden is less. Yuan Kong held the teacup with both hands and gently stroked it. Everyone, whether it is the warriors of order who have been guarding the realm of order or the Void Patrol team, have been busy for 5 eras. Only a few people are not confused at all. Just like Big Idiot, he used this one thought and goal, as well as those ideas and mentality that are different from ordinary people, to cover up all the uneasiness, confusion, and a series of emotions that would hinder progress. But everyone is different. Compared to him, everyone is a normal person. Even if you suppress similar emotions, it does not mean that they do not exist. It was normal to feel lost. Against an opponent they knew they could never defeat and a goal they could never reach, they would still do their best and give up everything they had to fight. Still, there would still be anxiety. Who would be willing to face a goal they could never reach? They could only fight with all they had, and if there was no meaning in the end, then life and time here, such a heavy topic. It remained heavy no matter how many years had passed. After all, not everyone was like Little Star, who could walk without hesitation towards a predestined ending without fear. It was precisely because he felt indifferent towards all things that he could walk with such determination. Perhaps, whether it was fighting or staying in the divine realm, it did not make much of a difference to him. It was just that he wanted to fight more, and from the moment he set that goal, he had no intention of turning back. He tilted his head to look at Little Star's sleeping face. It was no longer the endless exhaustion and restlessness that he had shown during his countless, unexpected deep slumber. This time, when he was sleeping soundly, it was as if he had returned to the time in the realm of the gods, when he was still lying on the clouds, calm and tranquil. Even Little Star himself had relaxed after the source laws had appeared. It was just that he was not in a good state and was sleeping restlessly. Yao Guang was clearly being treated like a rag doll. Looking at the sighing little angel in Yuan Kong, Shuang blinked her eyes. Who do you think will ascend to the top? Being brought back to the starting point all of a sudden, Yuan Kong was stunned for a moment. Snapping out of his thoughts, he thought for a moment. If it's not the Guardians, it's the heirs and the warriors of the previous era who were also warriors of the Order. Now, they're the ones with the highest level in the Void frontline, followed by Sister Jing, Lady Green, Shuang, and you, Shuang, as well as Green Phoenix and Siu. It's more or less in that order to ascend to the primeval tier. Could there be any accidents? The path to the primeval tier was smooth and unobstructed. It was just a little bumpy, like a muddy path after a rain. Now, with the origin rule covering it, the muddy path had become a true path to heaven. Aside from the prohibition seal, which was still blocking the path like a stinking rock, the biggest obstacle was the prohibition seal. Yuan Kong's mind raced for a while before he was suddenly enlightened. He slammed his palm on the table and bounced up, giving Yao Guang a fright. He hurriedly raised his head to look at the table. What's wrong? Is the sky falling and the earth sinking? Oh, I forgot something. Didn't I just say that I have something to do? I was talking about the Big Idiot and forgot about it. Yuan Kong scratched his head and laughed dryly. As he opened the portal, he said, Siu and Green Phoenix are coming out today. We have to go and take a look. Little Angel and Shuang both responded with an "oh" before standing up calmly. The former said calmly, Let's go take a look. The two of them have indeed slept for a long time. They must have broken through in one go and encountered another seal. They suddenly came into contact with the origin rule when they were not under the prohibition seal. Doesn't that mean they have one less chance to have the prohibition seal have compared to the others? Shuang tilted her head and asked doubtfully. Wow, that sounds like a loss. Yuan Kong could not help but exclaim. Fortunately, we were all in the prohibition seal, so half of it was gone. Yao Guang looked at the three of them talking as they walked and stared at them. Hey, don't leave me here alone. Seeing that the three of them did not intend to pay attention to him at all, but deliberately left the portal in place, Yao Guang was anxious. He hurriedly looked around. After a moment, he calmed down and broke the entire space in one breath. Then, he carried Brother Feng and followed them. Wait for me, little angel, and the other two. This girl is really going to follow us and break the core of the creation sanctum. She is really going all out just to join in the fun. Chapter 1949. How long had it been since then? How many days? Or how many years? His consciousness had been immersed in the source environment, unable to feel the passage of time, unable to feel the movements of the outside world. It was as if he was about to fall into an eternal slumber, as if he had been completely exiled here, in a state of complete return. Just like the source life, returning to its own essence, the components of life once again becoming nothingness, and the only thing left would be his consciousness. And his consciousness would also be slowly worn away over an endless period of time, until nothing was left in the end. After returning to the source environment for such a long time, he could not determine whether he had suddenly left the world, or whether this return was just a little special. He could not tell. He did not even know how long he had stayed here, but from what he felt, it was indeed a very long period of time. He had been merged with the source environment, and did not know if anything had happened to his consciousness, if his consciousness would be used as a bridge to affect his soul. This should not escape. Every time he returned to the source environment, there would be a little change, and in such a long period of time this time, there would definitely be changes, but he did not know how much had come. His consciousness had been trying to return to his soul for a few days, but there was no response. His soul had ignored him, or perhaps the source environment's restraints on him were too strong. Restraints? Was it restraints, or was it because the integration was too deep that it was affected? He could not figure it out. He heard a sound, but it was not the sound that had sounded twice in the source environment, and it should be the sound that came from the outside. His soul seemed to have heard something, and it seemed that the connection between his consciousness and his soul had been re-established. As this thought became clearer, he judged that he was in a state of rapid return. At the same time, there was a sudden movement in his consciousness, and there was a huge, unknown thing. His senses felt like a huge thing was rapidly retreating from the state that had spread throughout his body, quickly leaving his consciousness. This clear feeling made him feel as if he was bleeding, and he could feel himself becoming colder and colder. After a brief analysis, he realized that it was the movement of the source origin leaving his consciousness. Probably because he had been merged with the source origin for too long, he did not know whether it was him who first moved his mouth and took a bite, or the source origin saw an uninvited guest and tried to poke him and then swallowed him. Hiss! Fortunately, the source origin was not a living thing, or his thoughts would have run even further away. In short, he used his strength to follow the direction where the sound came from, and then shouted 1-2 in his consciousness, and jumped out with this strength. The return of his consciousness was always accompanied by light, and he moved towards the light, as if this was a unified sign of awakening. However, when he really opened his eyes, and when the real thing was reflected in his eyes, the light would quietly retreat, and then, little star, you're awake? See, you saw that he suddenly opened his eyes, and greeted him with surprise and joy. She smiled sweetly, but her hands did not stop moving at all. Yin Nuoxing was still in a daze after waking up, and he was still in a state of being manipulated by others. He was stunned for a long time until he saw a familiar piece of clothing fly out from Siyu's hand, and he suddenly came back to his senses. What are you doing? Taking off your clothes, Siyu said calmly, revealing a suspicious and blushing expression. I've done what I should do. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes, reached out, and rubbed her head twice. How long have I been asleep? Not long. The concept of time is a problem, so give me a specific number. Siyu raised her head and thought for a while, and then said with a smile, the lowest level in the void front line is the mid-level yuan sure. Little star, you don't count. Tell me the truth. How long have I been unconscious? Yin Nuoxing suddenly became excited, and his violent movement startled Siyu. She quickly moved aside and sat down next to him. When she saw him scrambling to get up and pick up the clothes that were thrown all over the bed, She could not help but laugh. Actually, it's only 20 years. The mid-level yuanshi is just scaring you. Yin Nuoxing's movement stiffened, and he was stunned when he heard the time. How did it become 20 years? Sia moved down from the bed, calmly picked up Little Star's clothes, and put them on him one by one. She tilted her head and said softly, "We don't know. When we woke up, Little Star, you had been sleeping. During the time when we were not around, you caused a lot of trouble. I feel like I lost a world because I didn't participate in it. Anyway, when we woke up, we saw that your soul was still cracked. And then, well, then it became like this. You recovered and fell asleep. We don't know what happened to you, but you were in good condition, so we didn't wake you up." Yin Nuoxing was silent. It was probably because he had been swaying in the source environment for a long time, unknowingly. Although his senses had really stayed there for a long time, at that time, he was in a wooden state. He just numbly watched time pass by. Watched time pass by bit without feeling anything in his heart. When he felt something, he was already about to wake up. Void frontline. Okay, I'll talk about this later. The two of them tidied up their clothes, and Yin Nuoxing turned to look at the girl who was helping him tidy up his windbreaker. He asked knowingly, "What are you planning to do just now?" The girl trembled, tilted her head, and stammered with a red face. Just. He understood what she meant, but the girl herself didn't seem to be mentally prepared. He couldn't help but say, "How can the person who ambushes you not be mentally prepared?" Sia lowered her head even more. "You didn't wake up just now, so. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and lightly knocked on her head. He sighed and pulled the girl to the door. As soon as he opened the door, he saw Blue Phoenix leaning against the wall with her hands behind her back. When she saw the two of them walk out, she calmly looked at them. After a while, her pink eyes curved into crescents, and she revealed a slightly strange smile. It didn't work. "I thought it was my turn, Yin Nuoxing." Okay, this girl also participated this time. Could she not be so energetic when she woke up? He felt that his chastity would be lost sooner or later, and he would drown in the land of women, unconsciously holding the Nethervoid sword and charging into enemy lines. Oh no, this definitely couldn't happen. He felt a little shaken. Oh hell, he had been shaken a long time ago. However, because his foundation was solid, it was fine as long as it didn't suddenly collapse. It couldn't collapse, at least not now. TSK, would it be better if he lost his humanity earlier? But he felt that he was already crazy enough. Was it still not enough? Forget it. I'll think about it when I wake up one day and find out that I was raped. Anyway, I need to mentally prepare myself first. Once I'm ready, I'll just throw it to the back of my mind and let it stay there. Seeing Little Star's expression change, Feng Qing Wang pulled Siyu aside and whispered, Did you force yourself on Little Star when he woke up?" "No, after he woke up, I took off his clothes and I didn't have the courage. I was so close." Little Star's expression is a little exaggerated. He's probably having a mental struggle. The two girls looked at each other. Siyu lowered her head and mumbled like a child whose plan had failed. Feng Qing Wang was quite calm. She pulled Siyu to Little Star's side and poked his face. "Let's go. You've been sleeping for 20 years. The Void frontline has changed a lot." Yin Nuoxing came back to his senses. He looked at the two girls with a weird expression and couldn't help but mumble, trying to change the topic by force. Feng Qing Wang pointed at the door that was still open. "Then, let's talk some more." "Forget it. Let's go." "No, wait a minute. I might have to talk about this topic today." Yin Nuoxing stopped and took 2 steps back carefully. He looked at the two girls with a little shock. "You don't have anything else to do, right?" "Oh no." Feng Qing Wang shrugged cutely. Her indifferent expression faded away and was replaced with a reserved smile. "Since the plan failed, we can't do anything now. Let's find another opportunity to act later." "Yin Nuoxing, can you not use such a reserved expression to say such words that make my heart skip a beat?" He had slept for 20 years. In terms of time, such a short period of time did not affect him much. He was more used to sleeping for a long time. After he woke up, he thought about it for a while. Perhaps, other than the fact that he was injured all over and involved with the source law before he fell asleep, It was also because he accidentally relaxed. That was why he slept so soundly. The source law that he had been longing for was finally completed. It was normal for him to breathe a sigh of relief and fall asleep while relaxing. 20 years was considered a long time in the normal perspective of time. But in the abnormal perspective of time, especially for them who could easily cross eras, it was not particularly long. It would pass in the void frontline in a flash. The void frontline just happened to hit an important time, and these 20 years had passed. Well, he did not know if there would be any drastic changes in these 20 years. Anyway, he took a look at Node 0. Well, although he could not pinpoint exactly what had changed, he felt that there was a slight change. Node 0 had changed because it was melted by mini void turbulence. After it was rebuilt, other than the tower in the center, everything else was completely different. And, well, the void seal, the realm of order, and so on seemed to have changed a little, as if something had been changed based on the source law. His expression changed a few times, and he could not help but sigh. Yes, based on the source law, there were a lot of things that needed to be changed. The domain that was originally used to eliminate the chaos tide mark and suppress the power of chaos was replaced with the large environmental domain of the source law. Hui and Suifeng probably made the change after they made their choice. He did not have to worry about that. What he had to worry about was the pile of things that needed to be changed. Before he stepped out of the creation sanctum, he felt in advance that there were tons of things piled up at the gate. As soon as he stepped out, they would all collapse and bury him. You guys are just one step away from the high-level Yuan Shi. You guys are stuck by the seal. Suddenly hearing Little Stars sigh, Blue Phoenix and Siyu both turned their heads and saw him looking at them with a gratified smile. I suddenly remembered a few years ago when you guys were still little ones. Time passed. Unknowingly, you guys have also stood at this height. Yes, time has really gone a long way. Siyu put on a rather serious expression and nodded. She reached out and patted his arm, putting on a very reliable look. So in the future, you can tell us anything. We will cover you. Yin Nuashing pulled her hair and responded very seriously. I have nothing to hide from you guys. You guys know what I know. But if you want to talk about covering me, it's still too early, little girl. Oh, it seems so. The three of them looked at each other and laughed a few times. They quickly walked toward the gate of the sanctum of creation and into the observer's dimension. This space was as busy as ever, and the sea of energy was still churning as before. Now, it had completely turned into a colorful ocean dotted with endless starlight. The source of the structure seemed to have completed a long transformation and metamorphosis according to the step-by-step instructions he left behind. It was also when he saw the colorful ocean that his mind became truly awake, and a lot of thoughts began to swirl in his mind. At the same time, he also picked up a lot of things that he put down before he fell asleep. Ah, you're finally awake. The space in front of him suddenly bloomed with golden light. Hui, who was wearing a flashy golden robe, walked out of it. There were 2 dark circles under his eyes on his handsome face. He looked like a Yazi who had not slept or rested for 20 years and was about to die. Dandruff Observer, you left a lot of mess for us to clean up after ourselves. There are still a lot of things here that we can't finish. How are you going to compensate us for these 20 years? Thank you for your hard work. Yin Nuashing laughed dryly. He was indeed a little too relaxed and had been lying down for a while. Compensation. Let me think about it for a while. We stared at him with a serious face for a minute. Finally, he could not help but laugh out loud. He patted Maple on the shoulder. Okay, I'm just kidding. You finally recovered. We were worried and relieved to see you asleep. First, we were worried that you might have run into some trouble. Second, you haven't had a good rest for a long time, so we didn't let anyone disturb you. We just let CU and Blue Phoenix check on you from time to time. Well, now that you've woken up, there are a lot of things that have been delayed. First of all, we put his hands on his hips and turned to look at the 2 girls beside Maple. You 2 should go for the origin baptism, right? Blue Phoenix and CU shrunk their necks at once. Yin Nuashing was startled. No, it's been 20 years and you haven't gone for the origin baptism yet? They insisted on waiting for you to wake up before going for the origin baptism. In addition to them, your families Jing Yuanji, Shuang Shuang, Yuan Kong, and Ming, these two need to be seen by you personally before dealing with them. And some of Qing Jun's people are also waiting. They said that they want you to see them, so it has been delayed until now. Yin Nuoxing tilted his head after listening. I can understand Yuan Kong and that girl, but what about the others? Why must they delay until I come over? See, put her hands on her hips. It's a ritual. Wait, ritual my ass. Don't you want to wait for your maple to be present before going for the origin baptism? It's like you're in a very, 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 very important occasion and you want an important person to be by your side. See, he scratched his head in embarrassment. He pulled Little Star's arm and swung it back and forth. He crossed his arms and said righteously, "Coincidentally, I've also delayed it. By the way, it was Qing Jun who first proposed this idea. Yin Nuoxing. Both of them are like children. Well, in addition to our group, all the Order warriors at the front line have completed the origin baptism. The new inheritors. Today is also the day that Sui Feng and more than 100 people are training together." Yin Nuoxing turned around and looked inside the sanctum of creation. How many new inheritors are there? Hui responded dryly and shifted his gaze to the side. Seeing this, Yin Nuoxing more or less understood what was going on. It was probably within his expectations. Not many. Currently, there are only 5. A portion of the people who have a high probability of becoming the inheritors have not undergone the origin baptism, so this portion is not included. 5. Yin Nuoxing counted with her fingers. It feels like the situation is about the same as the original plan. By the way, do I know any of these 5 people? Oh, there's a little girl, Dao Tian. I know the other 4, but you don't. 3 of them are warriors from our family, and the other is a warrior from the Void frontline. Okay, the standard answer. He did not know that many people. As for whether the situation is the same as the original plan, I don't dare to say, and I don't dare to predict. This mouth of mine, isn't it? The void is going to collapse if I talk too much. Let's not talk too much and let everyone decide for themselves. We put his hands on his waist and bared his teeth. Although the essence that would be tested and determined by the origin baptism would not collapse just because he said a few words. Well, anyway, he just had to say less. It just so happens that everyone is now in the domain of the origin baptism. Let's go together and gather all the remaining people who have not undergone the origin baptism. With you there, the condition is met, and they will not drag it out. The domain of the origin baptism had now become a fixed domain of the sanctum of creation, although everyone did not forget that it was originally a garbage dump. Garbage dump? 20 years had passed, and the fortress of origin had long been finished. But let's talk about it later. Things had to be dealt with one by one. The fortress of origin could not run away. It was still in the heart of the world. This place was still full of starlight, reflecting the void starfield of the mythological era's defense line. From a distance, it looked like an ordinary starry sky. No one would think of the meaning behind it. This time, it seemed that a vague net had appeared directly in the starry sky. If it was not unexpected, it should be the net of origin and order. It could not be seen before, and they had to mark each point and give themselves hints to connect the net in their minds. Hui, Blue Phoenix, can you see the net above? Yin Nuoxing raised her finger and pointed at the starry sky. Si raised her head and looked at the sky, her eyes reflecting the starlight. There isn't. Hui also replied, Nothing has changed? This place has been here for many years, and I have not seen anything. Wait, according to the situation, did you see something? Is there something extra? It's not that there's anything new. It's just that some things can be seen more directly. Yin Nuoxing blinked his eyes. The reflected net was a little blurry, and only the outline could be seen. It was densely packed throughout the entire void star field, and it looked quite spectacular. Maybe it has something to do with the fact that I've been floating in the source environment for 20 years, although it feels like a longer time has passed. Hui was stunned. Your consciousness has been floating in the source void for the past 20 years. Yes, I can't come back, and I can't move. I'm like a bystander looking at the source environment and looking at myself. Yin Nuoxing took the lead and walked forward with her arms crossed. Logically speaking, returning one's consciousness to the source environment for a long time would be as tiring as a dog, and when one's consciousness is about to blur, one would be forcibly sent back to the real world. This time, I don't know why I stayed there for so long. The last few times I entered the source environment, it was at most half a day. The essence has changed. Is there any specific change? There seems to be a little bit. Look. Yin Nuashing stopped in his tracks and extended his hand towards Chao Hui and the two girls. He took a deep breath, and his eyes became sharp. After a moment, his body suddenly emitted a pure, white energy. There seemed to be something mixed in the white, making the white look grayish and silvery at the same time. If one's senses were removed and only used their eyes to judge, they would only be able to see that it was pure white. It was pure and clean, like a small ball of weak, white flame wrapped around its surface. Looks like your observer form, but the aura and state are completely different. This aura. Hui stepped forward and waved his hand on the layer of white energy on Maple's body to sense it. This is completely the strange aura of the primordial void. Your own aura is gone too, as if it has been completely covered by the aura of the source origin. Yin Nuashing continued to release the aura of the source origin for a while before withdrawing it. She waved her hand with a troubled expression. I'm not familiar with the source origin yet, so I'm going to use it directly. Phew, it's a bit tiring. It's not easy. Just as Hui was about to continue asking, a few rays of light suddenly fell in front of them. A group of people rushed out from the light with a hurried look on their faces. Their energy surged, and when they looked in front of them, they were stunned. Little brother Feng, you're finally awake. The fully armed Sui Feng and brother Lei saw little brother Feng and the others as soon as they came out. They greeted them with confusion and quickly looked around. After a while, they asked little brother Feng and Huiju in confusion, "Did you see the domain crack just now?" We inexplicably felt the aura of the source origin. It appeared very suddenly, and it tore a corner of the domain in half a second. Now it's gone again. Hui and Qing Huang turned their heads to look at the observer who was playing dumb. Sui Feng, brother Lei, and the others were stunned for a moment. They looked at him and then saw little brother Feng use the power of the source origin again. The domain cracked again in their senses, and they all put on a look of realization. This guy almost tore down the source domain as soon as he woke up. The aura of the source origin. The girl in white came forward, and under everyone's stunned gaze, she suddenly stretched out her hands and pressed his face. She looked up and down for a while, then put her hands down and circled around him. From time to time, she leaned forward and sniffed as if she was sniffing his scent. Yin Nuashing shuddered. This strange action, he seemed to remember that there was an origin heavenly god who also fiddled with him like this when he was lying down, treating him as something, a strange thing, touching and smelling it. Before the girl in white could smell him until his scalp tingled, she stepped back. She looked up at him slightly and thought for a while. The essence has been removed. It is confirmed that it is a creation of the source origin. My judgment is correct. The traces of the past have not dissipated, and there is no impact. In other words, the essence has now been exposed. Although there are still remnants of the past characteristics under the control of a higher level of essence, the traces of the past are not an obstacle. Sui Feng heard this and also came forward to pinch little brother Feng's arm and shoulder. He looked around and nodded. That is indeed the case. But just from the appearance alone, if one's cognition has reached our level, they can only think of little brother Feng as an energy life form. It is not easy to judge the essence of the source origin. Derivative of nothingness and source origin. Now, can you be more specific and judge that it is a creation of the source origin? Is it also a creation of life? It's not specifically referring to any of the creations of Primordial. Rather, Primordial's creations can only be categorized as creature-type life forms. It's not accurate, but they are indeed special creature-type life forms. The white-clothed girl corrected him. I just woke up. Can you not look at me like I am a creation? Yin Nuashing was speechless. He was all too familiar with the look of this group of people. In the past, he used to look at his creations with the same look. These could be dismantled, these could not be dismantled. Now that they were looking at him with the same look, they were probably thinking about how many pieces he could be dismantled with his height of 8 meters. The girl in white patted Sui Feng and asked him to move away. She came forward and looked at Feng Ling again. Her gray eyes were filled with a purple-gold luster, just like the formation she cast. Feng Ling felt a little creeped out, and goosebumps appeared on his skin. After a while, she reached out and grabbed his hands. She said calmly, "Make a baby, Yin Nuashing." Everyone, the whole place was silent. No one was standing. There was a circle of people lying on the ground in all directions. Yin Nuashing trembled as if he had been electrocuted. He quickly shook off the hand of the girl who was usually too calm. No. Her current expression also told him that she was very calm. However, the words she said made everyone feel like their nerves were about to collapse. Why did everything feel so high after waking up? When he opened his eyes, he was almost raped by Cu. Blue Phoenix was still leaning against the wall outside, indicating that she was queuing up. When he came to the domain of source origin, he was suddenly caught by Hour and said that he wanted to make a baby or something. Did he hit his head in there? Wait a minute. So you quickly jumped up and hugged Little Star. She looked at the girl in white and looked like she was protecting her food. She said carefully, "First come, first served. You have to line up." Yin Nuashing's face was gloomy. "Kill me. I might have come to the wrong place. This is definitely another timeline world." Chapter 1950. Sleep was a matter of luck because he did not know what would happen the next time he opened his eyes. Especially for someone like him who had a weak sense of time, it was not just a matter of 2 or 3 hours if he did not want to stay in bed. It could be 2 or 3,000 years, 20 or 30,000 years, or even 4 or 500 million years, or even 6 or 700 billion years. Everything would change in an instant, and the universe would turn into a flat plane, the galaxy would dry up, and the worlds would become empty. Well, this time, the consequences of staying in bed were not that serious. No. He felt that the serious consequences of staying in bed were not reflected in the changes in time and the world, but in interpersonal relationships. For example, it was understandable that the two girls wanted to take the next step. After all, they had been together for so many years. Could he be considered as acquiescing? Well, acquiescing to this situation meant that he felt that the timing and time were not particularly good. He was afraid that if he took this step, his consciousness would weaken. He was a little worried and did not dare to try it, but he did not reject it either. He was not afraid of changes, just a little worried. After all, if his consciousness weakened, the impact on this matter. Phew, forget it. Let's not talk about it first. We'll talk about it when the changes come. But what's with Xiao Shi? It was not the first day that they met. Whether it was the first time they met or the 5 eras they had known each other, he did not see the slightest sign of it. Yes, absolutely not. It was definitely not that he was slow or anything. He really was not. Usually, they did not talk much. It was only recently that they talked more because they had to deal with the many trivial matters related to the origin of the world, so they talked more frequently. They went from saying hello every day to frequently communicating with colleagues. In the end, it was just about work. Occasionally, they would talk about old stories, but rarely about themselves. That was it. Speaking of the relationship between the two of them, he thought about it. Actually, his relationship with the second-generation inheritors was the same. It was higher than that of a relative, but they were also comrades. According to the origin, heavenly God and the others, they could be considered as family. At this moment, they saw each other all the time and lived under the same roof. Therefore, it could be considered as such, although this roof was especially big, but that was the extent of their relationship. Then, she suddenly pulled his hand and said that she wanted to have a child. His brain didn't react. He felt that he needed to find a chaotic concept body to fight with all his strength to calm down. On the other side, Sui Qing was chatting with a white-clothed girl excitedly. Normally, Sui Qing was quite calm. Therefore, it was obvious that the white-clothed girl had just thrown a bomb at her from how excited she was. Although he was very agitated, he still calmly explained the reason. Teacher's long-cherished wish was to see the creation of life and the second generation of life born from the creation of life. Unfortunately, I was the only one at that time. I didn't have the other half, nor did I have the time to create a new one. Everyone, this reason is simply disgraceful, okay? As a god and devil, why would the god of origin do something so inhumane? Huey's face twitched as he said this. Sui Feng and the others couldn't help but smile bitterly. They also wanted to say this, but they didn't dare to say it. After all, it was a god. They were thinking of a more tactful way to put it. Yin Nuoxing's face twitched as he heard this. His eyes were about to split open, but he still had to defend the god of origin. No. Think about it carefully. They have more than 300 eras to time to fix it. If they really want to fix it, since it hasn't been fixed even after 300 eras, and it's just a long-cherished wish, it means that it's just a thought. It's just like how I keep saying that I'm going to collapse the void of order, but you guys didn't hear me actually say when I'm going to collapse the void of order, right? It's just a thought, so you don't have to take it seriously. Well, the last sentence was for the white-clothed girl. It couldn't be that the god of origin forced this wish on her, could it? If that was the case, he would definitely drag that person out and beat him up the next time he enters the shattered continent of origin. Whether or not he could beat him was another matter, but beating him up to show his determination was very important. From his slightly twisted and ferocious expression, the white-clothed girl could tell that he had misunderstood something. She calmly explained, "My teacher and I have discussed this matter seriously. His original intention was to explore the path of essence that I walk. The creation of life and the second generation of life seems to be a more advanced path to explore the path of essence. My teacher was more interested in this matter than I am, but he couldn't find the right conditions within the void. After a long time, he could only ignore it. Although he didn't force this wish on me, I still care about it, just like how you care about fighting against the chaos." Yin Nuoxing's mouth fell open, but after a moment, he was so anxious that he stomped his feet. "I was forced to do this, and because I've been tormented for so long, I had no choice but to treat it as my own matter. These are two different things. Two different things. If you care about it, then you don't have to care so much, right? Right? Right?" Yin Nuoxing clenched his teeth. He finally understood why this lass had suddenly started nagging him about having children. So there was actually such a situation involved. But, in short, this situation was very shameful. Sure enough, the next time he entered the shattered origin continent, he would beat this brat up without a second word. Originally, I didn't care. After all, I didn't have the conditions. But now there are conditions. As the white-clothed girl spoke, she suddenly came in front of him and held his hands. She looked up at him slightly and said expressionlessly, "So, have a child." Yin Nuoxing was so anxious that he was sweating. "Stop. This is a very serious matter. Don't talk about it so casually. Don't be so casual. It's not casual. I've thought about it. Moreover, I've just done an in-depth inspection. The conditions are met." He was referring to the way she pinched and sniffed him and then stood at the side in deep thought. "You call that deep thought?" Seeing his stiff face, the white-clothed girl thought for a moment and carefully listed the conditions. Human form, creator's body, good looks, good strength, and also from the origin system. The best choice. Everyone, was this a blind date? Speaking of which, the criteria for choosing a partner was a bit high. The criteria of being from the origin system alone was enough to eliminate countless lives in the void of order, and she even had to include the creator's body. Yin Nuoxing's face turned red. He gritted his teeth and squeezed out a few words. "I have a family." "Oh." She was stunned for a moment. She let go of his hand, lowered her head, and thought for a moment. Then she turned around and left. Seeing this, he let out a sigh of relief. Just as he thought that this matter was over, she continued calmly, "I'll go and talk to Ming." Yin Nuoxing. He didn't roll his eyes and faint because he had just woken up. seeing that she really went straight to the depths of the origin realm to look for the little angel. Yin Nuashing was so anxious that he stomped his feet. He quickly looked at Sui Feng and the other two who seemed to be watching the show from the beginning. Hurry up and talk to her. Sui Feng covered her face and turned around. She's the most stubborn of the second generation. I can't talk to her. Yin Nuashing. I feel like I'm going to play ambush on all sides when I wake up because I feel like I'm being targeted all of a sudden. Sooner or later, my integrity and chastity will be at stake. Sui Feng patted him on the shoulder sympathetically and sighed. You have to be careful. Xiao Xiao is serious. As far as I know, the last time she showed such a serious expression was when she received the task of guarding a node from the gods. At that time, the node was besieged by 3 chaos concept bodies. But because of the massive magic circle set by the gods and Xiao Zhao's own characteristics, she was able to hold on. Well, the latter part is my own speculation. After all, I didn't know this condition at that time. Yin Nuashing's face was still twisted. He did not see any change in her expression. He did not know how Sui Feng could see the change in her expression from her overly calm face. In short, she's using the mentality of guarding the defensive line of order or fighting the chaos concept bodies to talk to me about having a child. Sui Feng and the other two thought for a moment. Then they sighed deeply and nodded. This was the battle mode, and the battle mode with all her strength. I think I should go back to the source and lie down for a while. We pressed on his shoulder and sighed. Wake up, buddy. You have to work. There are many things that have been put aside for 20 years. But he felt that his personal safety was threatened. Ahem. To be serious, who was it again? Oh, Xiao Xiao, right? Although he did not even know her real name, he knew that they had known each other for a long time. As for their relationship, it was just like what he had just said. But he really did not expect that they would suddenly leap to this step. Xiao Xiao was also a beauty. She was so beautiful that it was not surprising that she had more than bubbly. Her body was also not bad. These were all normal attributes. Although her face was always expressionless, it seemed that she was even more emotionless than he was. I digress. Can you not admire me so seriously? Anyway, this matter was ridiculous in all aspects. He thought anxiously for a while, but he had no clue at all. Suddenly, he threw a pleading look at CU and Blue Phoenix. Then, he saw the two girls standing a little far away from them with their arms around each other's shoulders and whispering. Little Star's child. I wonder who it will look more like. Blue Phoenix, do you plan to have a child? I'm fine with anything. Look at Little Star. What do you plan to do? Me? I don't want one for the time being. But Little Star's child sounds very interesting. What do you think it will be like when it's born? Both of them are creature-type life forms. Will they maintain the initial appearance of a blurry cloud for a period of time, or will they be in human form when they are born? Probably in human form. If the influence is strong enough, it should be able to skip the initial chaotic state and directly take shape. Speaking of which, Little Star's race only has one child. Does he want to have a few more children to increase the population of his race? Speaking of which, it seems to be the case. But Little Star himself is not in a hurry. Yin Nuashing. It's over. This side is already planning to coordinate with the outside. I'm gone. I have to retreat quickly. If I don't run, I'll be gone. No. Why is the girl who just said that she wants to line up now planning to coordinate with the outside? Just as he was about to open the portal and go to the observer dimension to find a random corner to hide, Little Hour came back and quickly came in front of them and said, Ming agreed. Yin Nuashing, you idiot angel. Idiot. Big idiot angel. At this time, you should reject it. Reject it. Reject it. Then let's not delay. Little Hour rushed up and grabbed his arm. As she pulled him away, she said, I heard from the teacher that there are 3 methods. Wait for me to tell you in detail. When Yin Nuashing's face was ashen, he suddenly heard this voice from beyond the sky. In an instant, he had an idea. He grabbed Little Hour and said, Wait a minute. What kind of 3 methods are they? Yes, there must be a hidden meaning here. There must be another method. There were not many normal life forms in Honestport, especially him. And her, they were all abnormal. There must be some ambiguity here. The method of the human race and the two methods of creature-type life forms like us. Stop! Stop! We immediately turned around and pushed Sui Feng, CU, and the others into the depths of the origin realm. You two can talk about this in private. We'll be waiting for you inside. We said to Sui Feng and CU. Don't go. Don't go. Don't go. Don't leave me here alone, you bastard. At least leave Qing Huang here. Yin Nuoxing immediately stretched out her hand towards the people who were running away. She looked desperate, as if she had just been pushed into a pit of fire. I'll definitely push you into the void and beat you up. Hui, you bastard. Hui and the others, who had already run away, shuddered when they heard the miserable roar that spread across half of the origin dimension. They covered their ears and pretended not to hear it. They ran even faster. After a tragic howl, Yin Nuoxing turned his head to look at the girl in white who was pulling him but didn't move, seeing that she kept staring at him, as if waiting for instructions. The two of them were left feeling a little awkward. Well, you can continue, she nodded and said softly. There are two methods of creature-type life forms. One is related to the soul, and the other is related to the origin structure. Oh, he understood. After all, they were both creature-type life forms. The most important part was naturally the origin structure and the soul. Energy life forms could also choose this method to leave behind offspring. However, he was a little unclear about the specific operation. He did not know about it because he did not need it. It was impossible to not understand it all. He knew that it was to let the soul or the origin structure of the two fuse, but there seemed to be a more specific explanation. He did not expect that he would really ask this question out of curiosity, and they really talked about this topic when they were young. If the three methods are simple, there is no need for any special treatment. If it's a simple matter of leaving behind offspring, all three methods would work without any special treatment. In fact, more methods could be developed, but it's meaningless to simply talk about the number of methods. What I've discussed with my teacher is not a normal method and requires special treatment. It requires the extraction of the soul root or the construct root, with one of the soul root or the construct root as the main body and the other as a supplementary existence. I recommend you as the main body, since your essence is more advanced than mine. This method is similar to the survival of the fittest in nature, where the more efficient and important parts are chosen as the main body and the supplementary body to fuse into a whole. The new life born would usually have more excellent foundations and potential, which is equivalent to evolution. However, there would also be uncertainties, since both are creature-type life forms. Simple fusion is simple, but it might not allow everything to take shape smoothly. Yin Nuoxing thought about it, and felt that it was quite normal so far. It did not seem unacceptable. Wasn't it just taking a bit of the origin structure or the origin structure? He would just treat it as if he was creating something again. Although this time it was creating a child or something. It was still a little awkward, but he had to stop. He had to confirm the process because he heard that it may not be possible. It needs to be done in a deep soul fusion, young master answered calmly. Yin Nuoxing slapped his face. It was as he expected. It could not be taken out and had to be done inside. Moreover, the point was not the deep soul fusion, but the word proceed after the fusion. Yes, the latter was the key. As for the latter part, it was the blind spot in his knowledge. Yes, he did not know. He was not him, he did not know, although it seemed to be a little different from the first method. Anyway, he did not know. That's the situation. Young master thought for a while and confirmed that he did not miss anything. He nodded and opened his hands to him. Do you want me to go into your soul? Or do you want to come to my place? I recommend using your soul as the main venue. The capacity is bigger. Yin Nuoxing felt a headache coming on. He quickly stopped the topic. Well, that won't do. It's too rushed. This is not just a matter of creating something and adding a lump to it. This is. I know. I just confirmed it. The conditions are suitable. Both are suitable. Young master tilted his head. Or do you think that I don't have enough conditions? You need to wait for me to advance to the higher level before. No, it's not about that. Yin Nuoxing's head was buzzing. He looked at her with cold sweat. Anyway, it's a very that kind of problem. Young master seemed to understand something. The prerequisites are not enough. Yin Nuoxing nodded vigorously. He watched as she slowly put down her hands. She lowered her head slightly and pondered for a while. Then, she raised her head and looked at him with those gray eyes. She said softly, "If that's the case, I was too hasty. Let's start with the prerequisites." Yin Nuoxing. She did not intend to let him go. Anyway, this strange topic that suddenly popped up ended here. If it did not end, he might become autistic. He needed to find a chaotic concept body and have a fierce battle to recover. Of course, it was almost the same now. He felt that the damage to his spirit had reached 80%. The speed of the damage was unprecedentedly fast. The two of them walked side by side into the depths of the domain of origin. Young master still had an expressionless face, but he could feel that her attention was beginning to fall on him, with a sense of locking onto him. Well, this was one of the reasons for his headache. If not for today's conversation, he might not have felt anything just by focusing on her. Well, no. In short, when the two of them walked into the depths of the origin domain, Hui and his group were already waiting there. Looking at his large family, they were all looking at him with strange gazes. We must have told them about this strange topic. Just listen to what he said, and you'll know what he meant. You're done? That despicable expression caused Yin Nuoxing's skull to explode on the spot. Pure white energy surged, and his facial expression was so dark that only a pair of gorgeous eyes could be seen clearly. He slowly raised his right hand, and a head-sized pure white and gorgeous energy ball suddenly appeared in his hand, causing everyone to turn pale with fright. They hurriedly dodged, leaving Hui, who was covered in cold sweat, on the spot. 10,000 creations guide origin. Origin falls to nothingness. Bright white fireworks soared into the sky. The loud explosion was accompanied by a shrill scream that spread throughout the domain of origin. The raging power of origin instantly tore the domain of origin in half. Little Brother Feng's increase in strength is clearly visible. This is the upgraded version of 10,000 Creations Guide. Fiery Wind put his hand over his eyes and looked at the huge white fireworks. He turned to his sister and said, "Sister, help hold down the domain. This place is about to crack." "I can't hold it down. Don't worry. It's fine as long as it doesn't crack completely," Sui Qing said calmly. Sui Qing said calmly, her blue eyes reflecting the white energy flames that were exploding in the sky. "If you don't reach the defensive power of a high-level Yuan Shi, you won't be able to defend against it. However, the target of the attack is Hui Jun, so you don't have to worry." Everyone calmly sat down and looked at the fireworks. 10,000 Creations Guide would explode for a few minutes. Look at these gorgeous fireworks. Every ray of light was the light of truth from a void. Sui Qing looked around and carefully retreated to the side of Little Hour, who was looking up at the fireworks. She whispered, "Are you really going to?" "Yes, but it has to be put on hold for a while." The girl in white nodded. "The prerequisite is not enough." Sui Qing sighed in her heart. After all, it was Feng Ling. It was not difficult to understand. However, the prerequisite was quite difficult. The girl in white turned her head and looked at her. "How can the prerequisite be achieved quickly?" "I don't know." Sui Qing shook her head. "You and I have never been in a relationship before. Do you want me to ask Little Feng?" "Oh, but Little Feng seems to have only failed twice. Moreover, he doesn't have much experience with boys." "Well, it's very difficult." Sui Qing looked at Little Hour's serious expression. She thought for a while and came up with a bad idea. She pointed to the side with her eyes at Siyu and Ming's family. "Maybe you can talk to them. Although it's probably not a good idea. After all, it's an open attack on their base camp." Little Hour took a minute to think. Then, she turned around and walked towards Siyu and the rest. Sui Qing's pretty face changed a little. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. This was really a bad idea. She did not believe that Little Hour did not realize it. However, if she really did it, well, Xiao Shi was an emotionless idiot, while Feng Ling was an abnormal warrior who put all his talent into battle. He only left a tiny bit of emotion to deal with his whole family, but to round it off, he could also be considered an emotionless idiot. In any case, they were both emotionless. Feng Ling was slightly better. At least he could faintly sense other people's feelings. Xiao Shi. Anyway, the two of them were just too funny to watch together. Throwing Hui, who had been blasted into charcoal, to the ground, Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes and looked at everyone. Now, let's talk about serious business. We have been talking about serious business all this time. We have not slacked off. Yuan Kong shrugged. But you big idiot, do you want to spend some time to familiarize yourself with your new power form? This should be the initial form, right? My matter is not urgent. I will slowly get used to it. This form is just a half-finished product. If I want to improve it further and use it in an official battle, I'll need to spend some time. Yin Nuoxing waved her hand and looked at Ciyu and Blue Phoenix. Well, I'm also here this time. You should go and complete the origin baptism. Wait a moment. I will call little Qing Zi and Jing Yuanji over. A certain charcoal body on the ground quickly stood up and cleaned himself. He muttered in his soul for a while. Then, he gave everyone a thumbs up. Done. They will be here in a while. Let's go to the center first. Finally, the day has come. Suifeng rubbed his hands and led the way to the center of the origin domain with a smile. Finally, it is time for the main event. I have waited for 20 years. Let me, Kong, have a few more inheritors today. Ha 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 ha. Suifeng's strange smile and tiptoeing as he walked left Yin Nuoxing and the others in a daze. Yin Nuoxing could not help but look at Suifeng. What happened to your brother? Oh, he has always been curious about which god's power Blue Phoenix and the others will inherit. He has been waiting for you since 20 years. He must be very excited when you wake up. Suifeng shrugged. I don't know what he's excited about. Usually, he would get excited for no reason. Don't worry about him. Yin Nuoxing looked at Suifeng, who was jumping around with a strange expression on his face. He had encountered so many strange things today. He felt that everyone had become strange after he woke up. For example, even when Xiao Shi was walking in front, she would occasionally pay attention to him who was walking behind her. It was the little angel came to him. Her white wings covered half of his body. She slightly folded her wings and gently touched his cheek with the tip of her wings. You refused? Yin Nuoxing. It is normal to refuse. But you, why did you agree to it? The little angel shrugged. I don't really care about it. Besides, what she said was quite interesting. I also want to see how the two of you are doing. I'm a bit curious. Yin Nuoxing, he had been sold, and he had been sold just because he was curious. Chapter 1951. There is no need to burn incense, bathe, fast, and change clothes. There is also no need to pray devoutly for 1,000,000 years, and there is no need to physically offer up everything. As mentioned before, this was an emergency period of war, so dealing with this kind of thing was basically just taking a stroll inside. If a true inheritor unexpectedly appeared, then the second stage would be carried out. If there was no one, then so be it. If there was no one, then it was just an ordinary origin baptism. After being branded with all kinds of origins, one could continue doing what one was supposed to do. There was no torment at all, and there was no need to put in any effort or have any tests or whatnot. There was no such thing. However, the second stage, which is to lie in the pillar for 10 or 20 days, will be over. The structural origins will all be branded with weak origin laws and weak origin energy, which could be considered a fundamental change. Then there is the matter of the energy. It is time to start the transformation of the energy source. As one of the newcomer representatives, Dao Tian was now explaining to Ciyu and Qing Huang what they would encounter during the origin baptism. I inherited the power of a heavenly god of origin that is related to spiritual power. In addition to the origin energy, there's also a lot of explanation and various ways to use spiritual power. Well, all the concepts I had in the first half of my life have been smashed to pieces. You all have to be mentally prepared for your worldview to be crushed. Although it sounds very shocking, worldview and whatnot. Ciyu muttered softly and turned to look at Little Star. When everyone heard that the little girl did not finish her sentence and saw that she had turned her head to look at one of the observers, they all muttered in their hearts. There is a huge source of worldview crushing here. No matter how tenacious one's worldview is, it will still be crushed to pieces. Yin Nuoxing had just entered her daily state of being absent-minded and thinking of ways to destroy the underworld when she felt that the atmosphere was not right. She subconsciously turned her head and saw that everyone was staring at her. She could not help but be startled. "What's wrong? What's wrong? Why are you all staring at me?" Qingyu smiled calmly and said, "Looking at you being absent-minded." Yin Nuoxing, "Stop fooling around. I thought something happened." From left to right, they were Qing Jun, Jing Yuanji, Qing, people they didn't know, 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 Xing Elvimin, people they didn't know, 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 people they didn't know. Lord Feng, Lord Hui. Yi Qing, who was the first to see them coming over, raised his hand high and waved vigorously. The group also stopped talking and uniformly saluted each other. There were at least 7 or 8 different kinds of etiquette here, and it was hard to tell where they came from. Anyway, he understood that the large group of unknown people who looked like they were here to cause trouble were definitely from his family. They had been focused on causing trouble for more than 10 years without stopping. "Long time no see. Can you not put on such an expression as if you have seen a ghost?" Min, who had not seen them for a long time, raised his hand to greet them. His face was like the arrival of the warm spring, and the earth had just thawed. Although it was still stiff, there were more or less signs of activity. When you all gathered together, I was already a bit surprised. Why are there so many people waiting for the origin baptism? Do you all still want to be companions? Yin Nuoxing said with her face twitching. Min raised his hand and pointed to Yi Qing and Lord Qing. "I wanted to come a long time ago, but they stopped me. They said something about the finale or the finale. In short, they made me wait until now." Xing Lu, who was squatting on the ground and playing with fire, stood up quickly. "Same." Jing Yunji said softly, "Same. Oh, I also wanted to wait. We finished the baptism long ago." Shui Yin is here for the baptism today, so we came over to take a look. Jihan Xiao reached out and patted Ji Shui Yan's head. The latter turned her head and bared her teeth at him. "Stupid father, I don't need you to worry about me." The mischievous warriors of the heavenly realm said. "We were all delayed by Lord Qing." Ritual. It's very important." Lord Qing, the culprit, put his hands on his hips and said righteously, "Of course, we have to wait for Lord Feng to be here." "Put down the brick. I didn't expect Lord Feng to lie down for 20 years. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. "Wait, I'm not taking the blame for this. I didn't know you guys had such a prearranged event like a festival. Speaking of which, when I was fighting with the Source Law, you guys were a little... Can't you call me?" Everyone murmured and said in unison, "The busiest guy in the Void front line, who can call you Yin Nuoxing, Sui Feng, and the rest were working on the core of the Origin territory." After a while, they landed from the starry sky and clapped their hands. "All right, we've made the specifications higher so we can handle it faster. Go. The energy consumption in this state is a little fast." "Oh." A large group of people raised and clapped their hands and dispersed towards the Origin territory. Although they did not really go through the Origin baptism, everyone had rehearsed it many times. They were just waiting to execute it. Yin Nuoxing turned his head and saw Siyu nervously tugging at his clothes. He thought for a moment, reached out, and patted her hair. Go, don't be so nervous. Just let nature take its course. He also opened his arms and hugged Blue Phoenix. He said a few words very calmly. According to what everyone said, the girls around him were the most promising ones, which meant they were the most promising ones to become the inheritors. This invisible expectation itself was a kind of pressure. It was pressure that came from other people's carelessness, and it was also pressure that they would put on themselves. Although he did not think it was a big deal, and it did not matter whether they succeeded or not, this was obviously not an excuse that could persuade them. It was fine if others put pressure on him, but if it was pressure on himself. To be honest, he did not know how to get rid of it. If he knew, he would not have tormented himself like this. Watching Siyu and Blue Phoenix walk into the depths of the origin territory, Yuan Kong also rushed over and hugged the big idiot. Big idiot, what about my sister and I? Are we also going to go through the origin baptism? Flintlock and the others pricked up their ears. This was one of the topics that they were quite curious about. Oh, you guys, I've thought about it. Yin Nuashing turned his head to look at Yuan Kong and the little angel. He pulled his hair and said seriously and slowly, there are two plans. As far as I can think of, there are two plans that have a guaranteed success rate. The first method, I will wrap you with myself, and you will go to this origin territory to walk around and be done with the baptism. The second method, you will live in my soul for a while, and I will help you with the baptism. Everyone was stunned when they heard this plan. After thinking about it carefully, they felt that it seemed to be a feasible method. It could prevent them from being harmed by the origin force when they were baptized by the death mist of the abyss. No way, this is not avoiding it, right? Yuan Kong narrowed her eyes slightly. Probably because she had known the big idiot for too long, she immediately caught the essence of the two plans. This is a transfer of risk, right? You will bear the risk for us? Oh, that's it. Yin Nuashing rubbed Yuan Kong's head. Well, don't worry. I am the executor, and the origin force will definitely cause less harm to me than to you. So, you don't have to worry about what will happen to me. Also, at this time, I think it would be better to be tough. This is not negotiable. You can only accept these two methods, or not go through the baptism. Yin Nuashing crossed her arms and turned her head to the side. She looked at them carefully from the corner of her eyes. I don't want to pay the unnecessary price for such a small matter. Yuan Kong scratched her head. She had no other choice. She looked at the big idiot's cautious eyes. He looked like he wanted to be tough, but he was also worried that something would happen to them. One idiot. If he was worried, he should have just said it out loud. Which method is faster? The little angel asked. Of course it's the first type. If I want to baptize my soul, I have to make special preparations first. If I use the domain of origin here, I can start immediately. Yin Nuashing saw that she had made up her mind and blinked. You already have an idea? Yes, that's it. The little angel nodded and turned to look at Yuan Kong. Yuan Kong saw that her sister had already made up her mind, so she did not want to say anything to the big idiot. She just stuck her tongue out at him. How should I cooperate with you? Oh, it's not a problem. Yin Nuashing held their hands. The origin energy flowed with a faint surge of origin energy from his body to the two of them. It wrapped around them like an energy barrier. He confirmed that there was nothing wrong with the situation and nodded. Then, he pulled the two of them into the depths of the origin force. Let's go. This will do. Seeing that the three of them started to walk in circles, Sui Feng scratched his head. Is it really okay? Although I'm quite confident in the results of Brother Feng's work, but I'm not so sure about the execution. After all, Brother Feng often goes out in one piece and comes back in a translucent state. Elder Brother Lei crossed his arms and nodded repeatedly. This was an executor who could complete a mission very quickly, very accurately, and very perfectly. However, executors often made themselves into a mess, so they were never worried about whether little Brother Feng could accomplish anything. They were more worried about what kind of mess little Brother Feng would make after he was done. Looking at the origin force, he would be bedridden for 20 years. Well, this is just an origin baptism. It shouldn't be a big problem, probably, but is the origin baptism just walking in circles? After walking around the two pillars, Yin Nuashing was a little impatient to ask the two little angels. Although he already knew that this was a foolproof ritual, just walking in circles here was a little, well, he could only be patient and walk in circles. The origin realm covered the starry sky and the land in front of him. The sky was the void star field, and the land was black with endless twinkling starlight. In the depths of the land, Zhang Tai could see that the starry sky was dyed with different colors. It looked like a star field, but Zhang Tai didn't know what each star represented. The void star field hung in the sky, and each star represented a different meaning. As for the land, Zhang Tai didn't know. Walking on this land, Zhang Tai would occasionally feel like he was taking a stroll in the starry sky, crossing star fields on foot. It's all like this. Because it's the simplest baptism, you don't have to do anything special. All you need to do is to be patient. Be patient, it will be over soon. Yuan Kong nodded and stretched out her other hand to touch the space beside her, as if to check if it was raining. She looked at the energy particles of different colors entering her body and soul through her palm. She observed curiously. The origin energy is this feeling. In the past, when I touched your origin energy, I was prepared in advance. This is the first time I touched the origin energy without any preparation. What a magical feeling. Yin Nuoxing tilted his head and looked at Yuan Kong, who was actively touching the origin energy. Then, he turned to the little angel on the other side. The latter smiled faintly at him. No problem. Don't worry. I can feel that it's changing little by little. We have already prepared everything except for the order. So, there's no problem. In other words, only the order and a little bit of the order of chaos were left. It wouldn't be easy to change this. The abyss missed the power of God's destruction. If he wanted to change this essence, he might have to make some special preparations. Compared to us, you're fine, right? The little angel gently rolled up her wings and used the tip of her wings to caress his face. If there's anything unusual, tell us immediately. I'm fine for now. Don't worry. It won't affect me unless something big happens. You guys can focus on the baptism. As for the order, just ignore that part for now. Let's talk about it when I think of a way. Yin Nuoxing nodded. The little angel looked at him sideways and let out a sigh. Although she didn't want him to force it, well, at this level, it shouldn't be too much of a problem. She didn't have to worry about it for now. She just had to observe carefully along the way. Hey, big idiot, look in front. Yuan Kong suddenly pulled his hand and made him turn his attention to the front. He saw a figure standing in front of a pillar. It was a young girl wearing a loose green dress. Her clear green eyes were staring at the pillar in front of her. She didn't look like she was attracted by the pillar. Instead, she looked like she was in a daze. Furthermore, she was very engrossed in it. If it was something else in front of her, she would probably be in a daze. It's that girl, the one who made you suffer, big idiot. Yuan Kong shook his hand and teased. Yin Nuoxing rolled his eyes and ignored her strange words. He pulled the two of them and walked over. He greeted softly, Shui Yin. Ji Shui Yin was stunned for a moment. She recovered from her daze and turned to look in the direction of the voice. When she saw the three of them walking over, she was stunned. Yin Nuoxing was also stunned by her dazed expression. Remembering that Ji Shui Yin had forgotten about him, he said apologetically, sorry. I called you that subconsciously. It's not something worth apologizing for. Ji Shui Yin shook her head and walked closer to Yin Nuoxing. She seemed to be trying hard to recognize something. After a moment, she couldn't help but frown and sigh. I'm the one. I'm sorry. I really can't remember who you are. I heard a lot from Father, Siyu, Ming, and Brother Hui. But even so, I still can't remember who you are. It should be a very important memory. Even after looking at the memories that everyone pieced together, I still can't remember. If it's my name, just call me like you did just now. I don't feel annoyed when you call me that. Yin Nuoxing tilted his head. The destruction of the origin and order by the chaos was purely instinctive. It destroyed everything related to the origin instinctively, even if it was only the knowledge of the origin that existed in the memories of other life forms. Even if this girl had entered the Yuanshe realm, she still couldn't remember everything. Looking at this girl's troubled look, well, there was nothing he could do. The knowledge that had been erased couldn't be recovered. Moreover, it was erased very cleanly. It seemed that this girl had even erased the remaining memories in her soul. No, it was mainly because he didn't have a deep impression of her. After all, he had only brought this girl around the Cloud Continent for 2 rounds. Since the knowledge was gone, he could only rebuild it. Fortunately, clearing the knowledge wouldn't destroy the road. If you can't remember, then don't think about it. Forcing yourself to recall the knowledge and memories that were artificially erased, or even the part that was completely erased, will only add more trouble to yourself. Yin Nuoxing shook his head and changed the topic. Compared to that, you've been watching here. Have you noticed something? Do you need me to call Sui Feng and the others over? Ji Shuyan shook her head slightly. No, I haven't felt anything yet. It's just, she sighed softly. Her eyes paused on the pillar for a moment and then moved to other places as if she was looking around the entire domain. I can always feel a familiar presence. It's very familiar. I've been forcing myself to recall just standing here. She scratched her head embarrassedly and smiled awkwardly at the 3 of them. I've been thinking about it for a long time. Then let's not think about it anymore. Thank you for calling me out. If I was alone here, I don't know how long I would be in a daze. Yuan Kong thought for a moment and reached out to hold Ji Shuyan's hand. She smiled and said, "Then let's go together. We'll bring you along, and you won't be in a daze anymore." Ji Shuyan looked at the 3 of them. After a moment, she grinned and said, "Okay, then I'll have to trouble you." Yin Nuoxing saw that there was an extra person on her left. She looked at the row of 4 people and wanted to cover her face with her hands. Unfortunately, she did not have a third hand. It looked like a spring outing. However, this row of people didn't walk far before dispersing. The speed at which this girl was chosen as an inheritor was faster than he had expected. He originally thought that he would have to walk around a little more and walk around 2 more pillars before he could awaken his inheritance. If only I could remember the things that I accidentally forgot after becoming the inheritor. Before being stuffed into the pillar, Ji Shuyan looked at him and smiled. She said this very seriously. Although he knew it was impossible, he did not say it out loud. He could see that this girl was very attached to that memory. Although she might not know why she was so attached to it, she cared about it very much. Sui Qing came over and stuffed Ji Shuyan, who was wrapped in a ball of energy, into the purple gold pillar in front of her. She landed and said to Feng Ling and the others, "It's faster than expected. Should I say that this is an alternative life form that is directly created by the gods? The result is not out of our expectations. We had expected that she would inherit the power of this god." Expected? What is the power of this god of origin? He is Xiao Shi's teacher. He is related to creation and magic circles. Yin Nuoxing took 3 seconds to finish thinking about this sentence, and then he said, "Oh, it seems that he misunderstood something before. He thought that the god of origin who was related to creation was in charge of all the creations of order. Now it seems that he was wrong. After all, there are many kinds of creations of order. The Temple of Origin, the Sanctuary of Creation, the Staff of Creation, and the Staff of Origin. These are all creations of order, but they're not limited to that." No, what was he trying to say? Oh, he wanted to say that it is not necessary for something to have a definite form to be a creation. For example, magic circles are also creations, but they're not the type of creations that have a definite form. The Origin Heavenly God was also in charge of matters related to creation. This was a major branch. As for the minor branch, his main focus was probably on matters related to spirit designs. After all, he was a life form formed from spirit designs. It was very appropriate for the Origin Heavenly God to take over this task. I understand Xiao Shi's side, but what does this have to do with Shui Yan? Oh, I haven't told you yet. Sui Qing turned around to look at him and said softly, Ji Shui Yan's essence was transformed into a creation-type life formed by the power of origin and the law of origin. This is very strange. She should have been forcibly changed into an ordinary life form of order that was born with the power of origin and the law of origin. But for some reason, her power of origin was transformed into a creation-type life form. and her life form had undergone a drastic change. Probably because the power of origin and the law of origin came from the creations of origin. Yin Nuoxing shrugged. This is also what we all thought. Although there are still some things that are unclear, but since it is a fact, there is no point in looking into it. At this time, Ji Shui Yin is a creation-type life form. Next is the question of compatibility. We looked for and matched the powers of the gods related to creation. In the end, we found this god, and Ji Shui Yin's power has the best compatibility with this god's power. Yin Nuoxing nodded. So this was a reason why Ji Shui Yin was matched with this pillar in the end. Then, after this girl completes the inheritance, she will also obtain knowledge related to magic circles, right? Yes, but it is also from the beginning, based on the power of origin and the characteristics of her essence. It will not take long for her to reach the level corresponding to her own realm. We let Xiao Shi be in charge of Ji Shui Yin's guidance and inheritance. If you have the time, why don't? Sui Qing's expression changed as she spoke. She waved her hand and helplessly said, "Ah, I forgot that you still have a lot of things to do. Sorry, just pretend I didn't say anything." Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. "Thank you so much for immediately remembering that I still have a lot of things to do. Well, even so, if I have the time, I will think of a way to help. If I have the time." Sui Qing nodded slightly. "Thank you for the trouble. Many things. Many things." Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. He really had a lot of things to do that needed to be done. If it was a normal person, they would have gone ball by now. How are the others? Have they completed the origin baptism? Yes, you're the last to start, and also the last to finish. Because there are fewer people this time, the energy of the territory can be increased to the maximum. The speed of the origin baptism is also increased by several times, including the inheritance awakening, so it can be completed very quickly. Sui Qing turned around and pointed to the other side of the territory. There are a total of 8 new inheritors. Other than them, there are also some who have the potential to become inheritors. However, their power is not compatible with the venerable gods, so they did not become inheritors. Yin Nuoxing looked towards the direction she was pointing at. There were 6 pillars shining with a bright and moving light. The surging energy revolved around the pillars, forming a spiral that kept spinning upwards. He recognized the aura of this group of people. It would be better to say that the main event was basically the few of them. Siyu, Qing Huang, Jing Yuanji, Hui, Qing Jun, Xing LV, including Shui Yin at the side. What about the last one? There's one more at the back. Sui Qing tugged on his shoulder and made him turn around. About a few thousand meters away, there was a pillar of ice and snow that was blowing a transparent and cold ice storm. The ice and frost aura swept through the area, and although it couldn't affect them directly from a distance, they couldn't help but shiver when they looked at it. It was as if they were in the middle of an ice and snow storm in an instant, and were being attacked by ice and snow from all directions. Is that Shuang Shuang? Yin Nuoxing understood the moment he saw the ice storm. He sensed it carefully and found that it was indeed her. Yes, the inheritor is the power of the ice venerable god. Yin Nuoxing counted with his fingers. 13 people, one more than expected at the beginning. It should be a good result. Indeed, but this result is also within our expectations. Sui Qing nodded slightly. Most of them came from the realm of the gods. They have been influenced by you too much and have already established their foundations. They have also walked very far on the path of nature. Or perhaps they have special bodies, so this result is not surprising. Her blue eyes looked at the ice storm. After a while, Sui Qing frowned slightly. We don't have the inheritor of the ice venerable god among us. The corresponding gods of Siyu and Qing Huang also did not leave behind any inheritors. There is no one who can guide them. This is troublesome. Wait a minute. Let me take a closer look. She looked around and confirmed for a while. She could not help but sigh. It seems that among the awakened inheritors this time, other than Ji Shuyan and Xing LV, there are no other inheritors who can help guide them. They are all in the other 16 positions that are missing. Yin Nuoxing tilted his head. The number of second-generation inheritors is exactly 147. 146? No, there were originally 149 second-generation inheritors. Excluding the god of destruction and the god of creation, there were 145 inheritors in total. There were 4 gods and 2 inheritors. Before we were hurriedly sent into the soul-subduing ring by the gods, 18 inheritors had already fallen. Now, there are 131 inheritors left. There is no duplicate origin power. In other words, including the new 11 inheritors. Well, it was not filled up yet. It was probably not filled up. Sui Qing's expression was still calm and dull, but Yin Nuoxing seemed to be barely able to see the hatred and anger that could burn the entire starry sky from her pair of blue starry eyes. It was rare to see her reveal other emotions when mentioning the deceased inheritor. He almost forgot. He almost forgot because of the positive and optimistic attitude that they still maintained. Everyone came to this era with hatred on their backs. They were forced to abandon everything they had in the past and came here with a mission. The monstrous anger and hatred that they left behind would not disappear with the passing of time. They would never be able to calm down. It was the anger and hatred that could not be vented in the past. It had been accumulating for almost 20 years, and it was getting deeper and deeper. Chapter 1952. For the second-generation inheritors who had accumulated hatred and anger for almost 20 years, it was a pain that tore the era and reality apart. It was even more unforgettable than killing themselves. He had once mocked himself in the 139th era, and perhaps the same words could be used to describe Sui Feng and the other second-generation inheritors. They once had a big, happy family and were of the same origin. They had been through many hardships, but they never gave up. As long as the void did not explode, they could still hold on. Until one day, they received an unlimited mission from their goddess, and everything changed. That was the last time they came into contact with reality. They didn't have time to say goodbye, didn't have time to say a few words, and didn't have time to do anything. That moment of parting was eternal. When they opened their eyes again, they were isolated in a small box, waiting for the end that seemed like it would never come. They allowed time to pass by without stopping. Being isolated in the small box, they would never know what was happening outside. Until one day, they were released from the small box and once again saw the world in front of them. Everything had become unfamiliar. The earth-shattering changes were the ironclad proof that the reality they were familiar with was far away. Everything had changed. However, nothing seemed to have changed. They were still fighting on the front lines of order. It was just that they no longer had the familiar faces of their big family. Only their group of 131 remained, cold and merciless. He could understand this feeling. After all, he was a guy who had reincarnated for who knows how many lifetimes. He repeatedly jumped on the path of reincarnation and wandered around as if it was his own backyard. He was used to dying and dying. He was also used to the passage of time and witnessed the world being burned, torn, and destroyed. He continued on this path for eternity without stopping. No matter how many people he had known, whether they were deep friends or ordinary acquaintances, no matter what, when time passed, he would be the only one left. He would be like an ancient soul drifting away from the world, carrying the obsession that had settled down for dozens of eras. Perhaps there was even more. That was why he could understand. That was why he did not know what to say. That was why he did not say anything. He did not mention anything about it. He did not have the habit of tearing the scars of others. Oh, if it was the scars of his enemies, could he tear them with a knife? Don't worry. Even if his hand trembled, he would just tear a little bit more. It would not affect him. At most, he would tear the path of reincarnation. It was not a big problem. However, it didn't seem appropriate to ignite the hatred and anger in her heart just like that, because it wasn't the right time yet. If he ignited it now, it would only waste his strength. Although he could understand that she might not be able to control her emotions, it would be better to suppress it for a while. Thinking of this, he subconsciously reached out his hand and pressed on Sui Qing's head. All four of them were stunned. Yin Nuoxing was dumbfounded. He was used to pressing on his little girl's head. Coincidentally, he was also distracted. Looking at Sui Qing's slightly widened eyes, he guessed that she was also a little silly. Then he quickly raised his hand again and patted her shoulder. Now is not the time to release that energy. Hold it in for a while. There will be a chance to say it. When the time comes, shout all the words that have been accumulated for 20 years to the void. Use the energy torrent to shout it out to the entire void. Sui Qing slightly raised her head and looked at him. She looked at his colorful eyes, which reflected countless things in the world. She had seen the endless scenes of madness and mania in those eyes. At this time, it was just a pair of beautiful eyes. They were very calm and had accumulated everything in the deepest part of their heart. It was because this was not the best time. Whether it was emotional transfer or venting anger at the right time, releasing all the accumulated negative emotions at that time seemed to be the best way to control oneself. She seemed to understand that this was the reason why he often lost control in battle. She raised her hand and patted her hair. Suddenly she said, "Have you listed me as your target?" "Oh no, that's just my hand trembling." Yin Nuoxing forced a smile and scratched his cheek. When I see someone showing that kind of expression, I can't help but want to say or do something. Probably because I know the consequences of being overwhelmed by these emotions, just like me. But I'm self-controlling, self-releasing, and losing control. So, I don't think there's anything. I've said too much. Sui Qing blinked her blue starry eyes and saw his embarrassed face. She tilted her head and said indifferently, "There are too many people in your family. If I get involved, won't there be a quarrel?" "So, I really didn't mean that." My hand just trembled. Yin Nuoxing was so anxious that he was jumping and sweating. Little Star's habit is to always press on other people's heads when talking about this kind of topic. She always looks at others with a helpless look like an adult looking at a child. Little Angel sat at the side. Yin Nuoxing was speechless. He didn't know what kind of bad habit it was. Yes, he didn't know. It wasn't that he didn't. Little Angel saw that he was almost confused by his own psychological confrontation. So she turned to look at Sui Qing. "Our family is very lively. Our family is quite harmonious. Basically, we don't quarrel. If we quarrel, it's only because some idiot is playing himself to death and can't stand it. Basically, we're the ones who focus fire on him, although we can't persuade him in the end. It just so happens that we can't hold this idiot down either. Do you want to give us a hand?" Yin Nuoxing, why are all the conversations today so high-pitched? Can you stop talking about topics that make my liver tremble? If there's nothing, please treat me as a non-existent invisible person. Yes, I won't care. It's better to say that you must do so. Sui Qing glanced at his tangled and even more tangled face and looked away. It's just a joke. Don't take it seriously. Yin Nuoxing breathed a sigh of relief and patted his chest. Let's talk about something else. By the way, since the matter of the inheritor is settled, let's deal with another equally important matter first. I guess I'll need all of you to come to the observer's dimension. Sui Qing immediately understood when he mentioned the importance of the matter. The fortress of origin. Yes, it's done long ago. After all, I took a look at it before I fell asleep. It would only take a year to put it back together. But I didn't expect that I would lie down for 20 years. Yin Nuoxing waved his hand and pulled the two girls towards the gate of the fortress of origin. You two can deal with the remaining matters first. See you later. Sui Qing nodded and watched him leave before she turned and walked towards the center of the domain. The size and area of the Fortress of Origin were much larger than he had expected. To pull it out of the observer's dimension, he had to find a safer place. To put it simply, it was a huge storm, and it would not stop there. It would also unleash its destructive power in all directions. At least, that was the case before it was pinned down. After all, it was pieced together after 20 years, and it had to roar a few times to express its emotions. It had been roaring for almost 20 years, and it was lucky that the conceptual space was tough enough not to be blown away by the wind. There was a lot of stuff near the center of the observer's dimension. Although he felt that hanging the fortress of origin out like this would not necessarily blow away the creation sanctum and the sanctum of creation, it was better to throw it out just in case. He was too lazy to clean it up. The pale golden ball of light floated 1,000 miles ahead. The surging radiance drew thousands of very obvious light traces within it, as if streams of light were rushing past. When it moved, it caused the space and the sea of energy here to resonate. The space above was distorted into a vortex, and then a funnel, collapsing towards it. The sea of energy below was pulled up by a powerful gravitational force, arching a mountain peak above the sea. Does this thing need a huge amount of energy to manifest? He did not expect such a movement at all. He thought that it was just a normal thing to take out, and did not know where the energy was used. Observing the movement in the conceptual dimension, he thought that it might take some time to move the colossal thing out. He still had not seen what the fortress of origin looked like. After all, the storm it roared was still blocking his view. He turned to look at the little angel in Yuan Kong. "Is there anything wrong with your body?" "Everything is normal." Yuan Kong raised her hand and replied, "The brand of origin has fused with the origin of creation. Now, even if we let them come into contact with order, there will be no adverse effects. It seems that it can even accelerate our transformation into order beings." The first part was fine, but as for the transformation after, he was a little confused. As the origin of creation and the essence of the abyssal death shroud, how should he twist it so that it could safely become order without affecting them? He had not figured out the answer to this question, but he knew that he could not figure out the answer by thinking. He had to try it himself to know what the result would be. Then came the most serious problem. There were probably only 2 abyssal death shroud beings in the entire void. Where could he find a safer way to research, or something to choose one of the 2? He felt that it would not work. This idea was a little shameful. This was not the same thing as dying and coming back to life. When it came to the alteration of the origin of creation and the origin of creation, it would be a small matter if he died if he did not handle it well. As a result, he could only hang in the spiritual temple without a way to resurrect. If the alteration of the origin of creation and the origin of creation were to affect the soul, it would be difficult to survive if the alteration of the origin of creation and the soul did not match. Well, it might be more convenient to use the origin heavenly God's explanation. For example, let's say his soul is in the shape of a ball, and the root of his soul imprinted in the spiritual temple is a ball. Now, he wants to transform into a cube, but he fails. He is stuck in the middle, turning from a ball into a gourd. Because the transformation is incomplete, if he accidentally dies in the middle, the fragments left behind after his death will be collected by the spiritual temple. But the collected fragments won't be able to determine what he has become. Because he is now a gourd, it won't be able to recognize him, and he will be gone. He can only hang there, unable to be resurrected, unless he dies completely. For example, during the 100 billion years he has been dead, the spiritual temple didn't even collect the fragments and directly returned to his original form, which costs a lot of time. That's what it meant. To be more precise, the origin of creation and the origin of creation had an abnormality due to an unsmooth transformation. The spiritual temple was unable to recognize that it was clearly the same individual, but the soul imprint was in 2 different states. Therefore, it was impossible to resurrect the person from the soul imprint. The transformation of the origin of creation and the origin of creation also had its degree of change and speed. Generally speaking, it would not immediately affect the soul, or else the failure rate would be equal to the death rate. Generally speaking, after the transformation of the origin of creation and the origin of creation, it would take some time before the transformation of the origin of creation and the origin of creation began to slowly adjust the body, including the soul. This could be considered a relatively slow transformation, a subtle process. But for the transformation of the origin of creation and the origin of creation, this was something that could not be avoided. This was a huge and violent transformation. In 1 second, the origin of creation and the origin of creation would tremble, and in the next, the soul would tremble as well. Basically, it happened simultaneously, which was very dangerous. For the time being, there was a way to save it, but the process was not too wonderful. It was not too wonderful for both the person being saved and the person being saved. It was best not to experience such an unnecessary experience. Just like death, although one could be resurrected, who would like to die for no reason? What are you thinking about? The little angel bent down with her hands behind her back and tilted her head to look at him. She looked straight into his colorful eyes. Yin Nuoxing came back to his senses and habitually reached out to rub her long silver hair. I'm thinking about your problem. I'm trying to think of a perfect solution, but I don't have any good ideas for the time being. I'm a little anxious. The little angel stroked his face gently. Is there a rescue plan? Yes, Yin Nuoxing answered without hesitation. Then it's fine. She smiled and wrapped him with her white wings. As long as there's a way, it's fine. We still have time. It's not the time to change the origin of creation and the origin of creation, so there's no need to be so anxious. Yin Nuoxing was silent. That's true. Time, the existence of this thing, is to constantly push people forward. Unknowingly, it will push everyone to the predetermined position. No matter if they're prepared or not, no one can escape. Big idiot, it seems like something is going to fall. Yuan Kong, who had been running around the area, hurried back and grabbed his hand. He pointed his finger at the sky and made both of them turn their eyes. A huge phantom appeared in the sky. It was blurry and ethereal like a mirage. It was so transparent that it seemed like it could melt into the air. There were various colors of origin energy flowing around its edges and inside. It looked like a huge building that was still in a state of construction. Only the framework was more obvious. With just the framework alone, one could barely see its general appearance. But what was more shocking was that the appearance of the Fortress of Origin was a little different from what he had imagined. He had thought that the Fortress of Origin was either a sphere or some kind of remnant building filled with pillars. But now it seemed a little different. And the structure was so messy. He did not know how to describe it, nor did he know which order to describe it. The huge object hovering in the sky covered a much larger area than he had imagined. He had deliberately thrown the world core of order 1,000 miles away to prevent the oversized object from falling on his face like a galaxy. But reality proved that he had underestimated the size of the object, as well as the extent of the madness of the gods of Origin's creation. They had to retreat quite a distance before they could see the whole thing, taking it apart into 2 or 3 parts. The entire Fortress of Origin was at least 70 to 80,000 miles in diameter. The main part was a pile. God damn it, he did not know what that thing was. It looked like a conch that looked like an awl. Its overall height was about 50,000 miles and was equally divided into upper and lower parts. The lower part was a straight pillar with a slightly tapered bottom. The entire pillar was equipped with a spiral that kept shrinking from top to bottom like a pendant, and the bottom part was also covered with about 30 similarly shrunken rings. As for the upper half, if he was not mistaken, it was a pyramid with a side length of more than 30,000 miles. At the top of the pyramid, there was an energy mark that was about the size of the entire pyramid in the surrounding space. It was unknown what it looked like. Currently, there was not enough energy, so the mark was quite blurry and could not be seen clearly. This included the 4 sides of the pyramid. The surface looked smooth, but there seemed to be some prints that could barely be seen. It was probably because there was not enough energy to manifest it. That was the main part, and the rest were the parts around it. Those were 32 tall and large rhombus-shaped crystals that resembled pillars. The width was 1/3 of the pyramid's upper part, but the height was the same. 16 of them were arranged in an inner circle and another 16 in an outer circle, with the inner circle circling the center in a clockwise direction, while the outer circle was the other way around. At present, there was only a transparent frame and no color could be seen. But if one thought about it carefully, they should be mixed with origin energy, which was why they should be colorful. Those two parts combined to form an entire fortress. Well, it certainly looked like a fortress with a strict defense. In short, it was a huge lump that suddenly rushed into one's eyes. Aside from expressing that they did not understand but were deeply shocked, they could not think of anything else. Clang! With a quaking sound, the space trembled. The two circles of 32 tall and large rhombus-shaped crystals in the Fortress of Origin now had 3 additional rings hanging on them, as if additional accessories had just been fastened on. Moreover, the rings in the two parts were different as well. The inner ring was smaller and obediently fixed at the top, middle, and bottom positions, while the rings hanging on the 16 rhombus-shaped crystals in the outer circle were obviously much larger and were circling them up, down, left, and right. It was also thanks to the outer rings that the diameter of the entire Fortress of Origin had increased by another 10,000 miles. Now, the entire Fortress of Origin was estimated to be 100,000 miles in diameter. If there was a discrepancy, it would be a little bigger. He believed that the heavenly god of Origin and the others would definitely like to make things bigger. By the way, it was only a rough outline at the moment, since it had not fully manifested. When it did, he had a feeling that there would be some weird things added. It was obvious from the dozens of hula hoops that suddenly appeared. The heavenly god of Origin and the others probably liked to place additional accessories as normal parts. Moreover, apart from the main body, inner ring, and outer ring, there was still a large portion of empty space in the Fortress of Origin. He had a feeling that something could be stuffed in those places. At least a few thousand staffs of Origin or a bunch of energy towers would do. Wow, this thing looks so majestic, no matter when you look at it. It really is a special model of the Fortress of Origin. Its size is one size bigger, and a normal Fortress of Origin would not have those 32 things outside. The exclamations and exclamations behind them made Yin Nuashing and the others turn around to see Brother Lei, Sui Feng, and the others walking towards them. They could not help but exclaim as they looked up at the area that was even larger than when it was dismantled into parts. But this thing doesn't seem to be complete. Sui Feng scratched his head. It's translucent, and the main body is missing something. I remember that there's a hole near the belly where the Staff of Creation was placed, and I remember that there's more than 32 things, and there's something, did I forget? Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and said that it was not fully manifested. It's still being taken out of the conceptual space. It's not fully manifested yet. Let's wait a few more minutes. He glanced at the sea of energy that was being rapidly mobilized, and his face twitched. Why does it require such a huge amount of energy to manifest? The sea of energy might need to use 1/10 of its energy. Is this a repair fee? Xiaoshu thought for a while and suddenly remembered. You forgot to recharge the conceptual space. After sleeping for 20 years, the energy in the conceptual space had long been used up when repairing the Fortress of Origin. If the object is only stored in the conceptual space, there's no need to recharge the energy used up. If you want to bring it to another place outside the conceptual space, you'll have to recharge the energy used up. This is what Her Eminence said. It seems to be an emergency solution in the conceptual space. It can allow one to endlessly overdraw energy when one is locked in a defensive battle. I'll take out a bunch of high-energy consuming creations right in front of you and bombard them with cannon after cannon. The lockdown will be for naught, and you'll die from anger. These are Her Eminence's words. Yin Nuashing was speechless. All right, it was another one of the inhumane arrangements of the heavenly god of Origin and the others. This method of dealing with things must have been very useful when they were forced into the concept space to encircle and annihilate him. So, now that I have to find out that the energy expended was to compensate for the energy used to repair the Fortress of Origin when he fainted, that's understandable. As the degree of manifestation increased, the Fortress of Origin went through another 3 or 4 changes. There were some changes on the main body, but there were also considerable changes on the whole. For example, there were 8 huge energy balls around the top and bottom of the main body. Judging from the surging energy of the 16 energy balls, even before they manifested, They were definitely used to open the head of chaos. There was also a bunch of patterns and markings that slowly manifested. They belonged to some unknown heavenly god of origin. As for their effects, they were either used to maximize attack or defense. Near the bottom of the pyramid, there was a hole about 1,000 miles in diameter at the center. Compared to the size of the pyramid itself, the hole was really inconspicuous. That's where the Staff of Creation is placed, Sui Feng said, pointing at the newly formed hole. I don't remember the Staff of Creation having such a big diameter, right? Yin Nuoxing gestured at the hole. He remembered that the Staff of Creation was only 20 to 30,000 feet in diameter. As he spoke, he was about to take out the Staff of Creation to test it out when he suddenly froze. The cores of the Staff of Creation and the Staff of Origin were still being dismantled. He had to find some time to study them and put them back together. Oh, that's something Her Eminence deliberately did to expand the attack range. It's said that when the time comes, a torrent of energy will spread out in a fan-shaped attack range. There will also be a bunch of things placed in that area that will multiply the power of the Staff of Creation. Everyone was speechless. She expanded the attack range because she was afraid that she would miss. Yin Nuoxing understood and waved his hand. Precision? Precision? What precision? I'm going to flatten the entire void with an indiscriminate energy bombardment. There will be no problem of missing the target if the bombardment covers the entire area in one shot. You won't even be able to escape. Everyone was speechless. This guy definitely has a lot in common with Her Eminence when they're together. In summary, the power of origin. Chaos still needs to be adjusted. I've just figured out a new form of energy, so I'll try to multiply the power and range of origin. Chaos by 1,000,000. When the time comes, I'll definitely tear the underworld into pieces. After another 2 or 3 hits, I'll wipe out all the high-level primeval and leave 1 or 2 peak-level ones behind. Oh, Simward will kill one with 1 slash and slowly play with the remaining one. I'll smash Origin, Chaos into Source Origin again and again. Everyone was speechless. When the time comes, everyone will sink into Source Origin. Before they can swim back, they'll be pushed back by a wave. Finally, they'll drown in Source Origin. Yin Nuoxing looked at the 4 of Origin and suddenly clapped his hands excitedly. Oh, Fortress of Origin. This thing can be used as an extra-large energy node. If I use it, I can increase the attack power of every Origin, Primal Chaos, by 3 to 5 levels. The final Origin, Primal Chaos, should be able to increase the attack power by several times. Everyone was speechless. Feng Ling, be a human. Our family members won't be able to fight if you continue like this. Chapter 1953. Everyone huddled together to discuss whether the observer's origin. Chaos would break the formation of his own people first before destroying the realm of order, or would it destroy the people of the underworld first? This was a difficult question to answer. They all felt that the energy identification was not very strong. Even though the energy identification of the sinful word had been arranged, but they just felt that it was not very strong. Anyone who had directly faced the power of the observer's origin, Chaos, would have the illusion that they would be pushed to the bottom of the sea at any time. It was an energy tsunami that exploded in the void, enough to destroy everything within sight, and anything that could not be killed would be pushed to the bottom of the sea. Now that the observer had mastered a new form of energy, it would probably pierce through the seabed and bury them underground. Well, they were talking about being pushed into the origin of chaos. The origin of chaos was much more violent than the void, and any opening in that place would cause earth-shattering tremors. They would not fear the explosive power of the origin of chaos if they were well prepared, but if they were to leave the realm of order, their formation would definitely fall apart, and they would not be able to hold their ground in the storm. The energy identification did not fear damage, but the gale could still blow people away. In the end, the energy identification was not completely immune, especially when the observer was constantly increasing his power during a fight, and they were afraid that the energy identification would not be of much use when his power was at its peak. As the topic continued, the fortress of origin hummed with a surging energy texture, announcing the completion of its manifestation. It also interrupted everyone's discussion and caused everyone to turn their eyes away. It's finally done. Yun Nuoxing turned to look at the fortress of origin. The fully manifested fortress of origin did not have anything extra compared to before. It was probably fixed after the placement of the staff of creation was done, and the rest was just adding various things that they did not understand but felt useful and powerful, such as the marks of origin and certain things that might exist inside. In short, there should not be anything extra. The fully revealed fortress of origin was a deep silver blue in color. It had a heavy metallic texture, and its surface was engraved with many indescribable origin imprints. They were all weaved by origin energy, and the rhombus-shaped crystals and energy balls around it were also of the same color. Even the huge, gorgeous, incomprehensible, and shocking pattern hanging above it was of the same color. That is the divine pattern of the continent of origin drawn by the gods together. It is a pattern similar to a divine pattern and is also one of the cores of the fortress of origin's realm of origin. Sui Feng explained when he saw Maple studying the huge pattern. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. One of the cores? How many are there in total? Altogether? Anyway, you just have to count all the cores in the fortress of origin. As long as they aren't completely destroyed, the domain won't collapse. If you don't destroy the core inside, you won't be able to destroy the core on the top. If you want to destroy the order domain alone, you might as well destroy the entire fortress of origin. That's much more straightforward. Sui Feng pointed at the 2 rings of rhombus-shaped crystals. The 32 crystals are also used for attack and defense. The outer ring's defense is normal, while the inner ring's attack and defense have weak concept-level power. Well, I don't know much about the rest. I don't know much about the inside of the fortress of origin. What about the 16 orbs above and below? Yun Nuoxing pointed at the 16 planet-sized energy orbs. Anyway, they're used for attack and defense. As for the specifics, Sui Feng answered with difficulty. Seeing Maple's helpless expression, he scratched his head and turned to his sister and the others. Sis, we might have to study the fortress of origin for the time being. Putting together all the things the gods have explained to us about the fortress of origin isn't even a tenth of its functions. Xiao Shi turned to Feng Ling. Perhaps Feng Ling can trigger something we can't touch. Everyone turned to look at the observer, who pointed at himself blankly. Theoretically speaking, it's very likely. Sui Feng nodded in agreement. Yin Nuoxing stared at her with wide eyes, but before he could say anything, Xiao Shi grabbed his hand and led him to the fortress of origin. Let's go. It shouldn't take too much time. Yin Nuoxing's face darkened. He couldn't help but look up at the sky and mumble, "Why me again? Why me again? Why always me? No, it hasn't been confirmed yet. Anyway, it's just a walk around. I might not even have anything to do with it." Everyone was speechless. Well, now that he's said it himself, something was definitely going to happen. Speaking of which, how do we enter this place? Yin Nuoxing looked at the main body of the fortress of origin, but he couldn't find the entrance no matter how hard he looked. His attention was drawn to the muzzle of the staff of creation, but there was a red and black light flashing from the entrance. Yes, it was the light of the energy of destruction. It was definitely her energy of destruction. They couldn't possibly enter from that place, could they? Well, theoretically speaking, the muzzle of the cannon could also enter the interior of the fortress. After all, the entrance was 1,000 miles in diameter, so it shouldn't be a problem for a person to pass through. However, the flashing light made everyone break out in cold sweat, and they all wanted to avoid it. You'll know when you get there. Actually, you can see the entrance just by looking at the size of the main body. Sui Feng said as he floated in front. He agreed with Sui Feng. The main body of the Fortress of Origin was 50,000 miles tall, and the entrance for a person to pass through was at most 2 meters. Even if the entrance was opened up in a special area, it would only be 1,000 feet in length, width, and height. It was probably enough to fit in the main body of the fortress, and it was hard to see if one didn't get closer. When he got closer, he realized that he could no longer see the fortress of origin clearly. In front of him was another piece of land. The pyramid was like a smooth landslide. When the bottom of the pyramid fell, he saw that there was actually a large platform outside. Looking from the outside, the platform didn't seem to be very big, and it didn't seem to be very big. Yuan Kong looked up at the two pieces of silver-blue land that stretched horizontally and diagonally upward, and couldn't help but mutter, "This thing is really big. Does the heavenly god of origin like to make things this big?" Well, actually, the products of the 8 elemental realm are all very big. Well, this thing isn't particularly big. Sui Feng scratched his head and looked at Feng carefully. Doesn't your brother-in-law often make things that are tens of millions of miles in diameter, or hundreds of millions of miles in diameter? The space in the creation sanctum is stuffed with a huge explosive with a diameter of tens of billions of light years. You said that those things are explosives, and they're just energy. Who would go look at them for no reason? But this is a building. It's different. Yuan Kong shook his head and looked at the fortress of origin. He couldn't help but mutter, "With such a big building, I think you'll only get lost if you go in. If you don't use spatial teleportation, you won't be able to get out in 2 or 3 years." Yeah, they also thought that this was very likely to happen. But it was impossible to get out of such a big building without using spatial teleportation. God knows how long it would take to get out if they didn't use spatial teleportation. There was nothing on the platform at the base. Sui Feng led them all the way forward. When they came to the foot of the base, they saw a real door. It was a door about 10,000 feet in length and height. If they didn't get close enough, they wouldn't even see it. This should be a passage that went straight into the main body of the fortress. The walls, ceiling, and floor of the passage were full of markings and patterns drawn with origin energy and origin law, although they didn't know what they were for. These. Yin Nuoxing leaned on the wall and looked for a while. She rubbed her hand for a while and nodded. It's used to help gather energy. It can accelerate the gathering of energy by several times. Follow these patterns, and you'll find the place where the energy is gathered. Everyone was shocked. Even Sui Feng scratched his head. But I've never seen these things before. The fortress of origin that my teacher showed me was a special type of fortress of origin. I've never seen one with so many patterns engraved on the sky and on the ground. Yin Nuoxing thought for a moment, then clapped his hands and replied, "Isn't it just released from the concept space and gasping for breath?" The concept space probably only overdrew the energy to put it back together and didn't replenish it with energy. It has been dismantled for more than 20 years. Why don't you allow it to quickly replenish its energy after putting it back together? Besides, the core energy core hasn't been installed yet, right? Then everyone realized that it was in a state of energy exhaustion. The Fortress of Origin felt that this was a moment of life and death, and was playing with the life and death energy. Life, energy? Everyone was stunned. Even Yin Nuoxing himself reacted half a beat later after he finished speaking. He suddenly turned his head to look outside, and immediately hugged his head with both hands and let out a tragic scream. My sea of energy! How could half of it be drained in one breath? Everyone was speechless. The sea of energy was probably in danger. It was definitely going to be drained dry. The next batch of energy sources hadn't been produced yet. If it was drained dry, the observer space would have no energy to use in a short time. Oh, there wasn't that much energy left. Stop! Stop! Stop right now, you bastard! If you keep this up, I'll have to wait for a long time for energy to gather again, you bastard. A certain observer was pounding on the wall and pounding on the floor while bawling her eyes out. She was crying so hard that her beautiful face was all messed up, making her look like a little girl. Well, as I said last time, a little girl crying and pounding on the wall was definitely a problem. See, the problem was here, and it was a big problem. All right, Brother Feng. As for energy, the new won't come without the old. Just bear with it for a while, and there will be more. Sui Feng patted his shoulder and looked at the rapidly declining sea of energy. His face twitched, and he could not help but smile bitterly. Let me tell you another piece of bad news. The 32 crystals and the 16 balls above and below are all waiting to be recharged. Yin Nuashing fainted before she could catch her breath. Everyone was at a loss whether to laugh or cry. That was great. The concept class rule fragments that were constantly replenished by over 2 million permanent stations could be converted into energy. Moreover, the Sea of Energy's unique structure and core structure meant that its rate of energy gathering should have reached a terrifying level, but it was still drained clean by the mountain-like fortress of origin. Now, there was only 1/5 of its energy left. They couldn't even hear the sea of energy churning. No one knew if the fortress of origin had heard the mournful cries of an observer, but when there was only 1/5 of the sea of energy left, it suddenly stopped its action of slamming into the sea of energy and began slamming energy into the void. Whoa, what's happening in the observer space? A huge energy vortex has been observed at node 0. Lord Foam, the vortex is getting bigger. Damn it, it's already spread to the realm of order. The energy is plummeting. It's not picky. It drained the abyssal death mist spawn dry. The entire void has been taken over by it. Everyone was speechless. Now that the cries had reached the outside world, it was too much to say that it wasn't picky. It was so hungry that it couldn't be picky. Yin Nuashing abruptly bounced up and smashed her head against the wall, cursing, "Go to the void and origin and draw energy. The void and this place can't withstand your torment. Damn it." Lord Foam, what's going on over there? Oh, the energy vortex is shrinking and the energy loss is decreasing. It's fine. Hurry up and replenish the realm of order. Lord Foam, please continue with your work. The crisis is over. Everything is fine over here. Everyone was speechless. It seemed that the fortress of origin had listened to the observer's words and really stopped when it was told to. Yin Nuashing looked weary and worried, squatting on the ground and leaning against the wall, her face ashen. This thing consumes a lot of energy. Where can we find a core to supply it with energy? I don't even know if the energy source can withstand this level of gluttony. It's not that bad. Suifeng laughed dryly. It's mainly because it has just been pieced together and is in a state of energy exhaustion. That's why it needs to draw a lot of energy at once. When it's fully charged, that energy source is enough to be used as an energy core. After all, it can carry a lot of energy by itself and can draw energy from the environment on its own. It's not entirely powered by an energy core, so this is for insurance. And in any case, let's keep moving forward. In the second half of the tunnel, Observer Lu was dragged along by the little angel in Yuan Kong. His face was pale, and he kept muttering hundreds of years, sea of energy, depletion, energy source is not strong enough, full energy, tens of millions of energy source worlds, full energy, and other words that made everyone's liver tremble. This was the fear of insufficient energy after the fear of insufficient firepower. There was no light in the passage itself, and it was all thanks to the patterns carved on the four sides. It was probably because of the energy exhaustion. Everyone stared at the patterns as they kept moving forward. After walking for quite a distance, they finally saw something else in the passage. It was not that they had arrived at a place, but a fork. In just 100 meters, there were 4 to 5 forks. It was like a maze. If not for Suifeng and the others who were more familiar with the Fortress of Origin, there was no telling how long they would have to go around. It's like a maze, Yuan Kong could not help but say. It's actually not that complicated. Suifeng quickly shook his head. In fact, the internal structure is simple. It's just that it's big. The 5 forks you see will not lead to any other forks before reaching the hall at the end of each path. The path that diverges from that hall is just for the convenience of going to other halls. So, the interior of the Fortress of Origin is one hall after another? Yuan Kong seemed to understand. That's right. It's individual halls. Do you remember what I said before? The Fortress of Origin can continue to function even if it disintegrates. Each hall has an independent energy core. That's it. Suifeng continued to walk along the path ahead, not intending to explore the forks. Go straight ahead and you'll reach the core of the Fortress of Origin. Ah, there should be a portal in the Fortress of Origin, right at the entrance. It's just that, well, it doesn't have enough energy now. The emergency energy replenishment might not even be enough to fill the gaps between our teeth, and some of the energy has been used in more important places. Portals, which are convenient for people to come and go, are dispensable for now. Now, we can leave a spatial beacon after going there once to fix the teleportation. Now, without a spatial beacon, we don't teleport directly, but only use short-distance teleportation and walking because we're worried that the surging energy in the Fortress of Origin would throw us into some weird place. Yuan Kong was startled. Is this some kind of defense? Sui Feng froze for a moment before turning his head with a dry smile. Occasionally, there would be fights inside the Fortress of Origin. Internal defense, right? Just leave a part of the defense to use. Even if it was a defense that could only be used when the chaos conceptual entity and other ghostly things rushed into the Fortress of Origin and went on a killing spree. Still, from what she understood now, something similar might have happened in the past and quite a few times. Yin Nuoxing suddenly came back to her senses after hearing Sui Feng's words. She quickly said, I just remembered something. These things were left for you guys, right? Why are you dragging me along? Am I right? The heirs were silent for a moment before Brother Lei coughed and could not help but say, I believe that when Her Eminence left these things behind, they must have left a set of insurance plans based on their understanding of us and their guesses about what might happen. As for that plan, well, it was a little early since the fuse itself was just a shadow at that time. So that's what I mean. Everyone turned to look at a certain executor, who was startled and his face twitched. That's great. Now all the insurance plans have been activated, right? Everyone smiled bitterly. After all, they had encountered all kinds of terrible things that pushed their previous plans into the abyss. So they had no choice but to activate all their insurance plans. In the end, they had caught a certain executor and started tormenting him. Wait. Little Hour suddenly spoke, drawing everyone's attention. She turned to look at the fork and said flatly, There's no point in crowding. We still need to analyze the Fortress of Origin. Let's split up. Without Her Eminence's guidance, we can only try to understand the fortress on our own. Everyone nodded without hesitation and ran towards the other passages, leaving the group to continue moving towards the core of the Fortress of Origin. Although they knew that there was only one straight path in the passage, they still felt like they were walking through a maze in such a spacious and deep place. That kind of large-scale maze seemed to be able to devour all intruders. Sui Feng looked ahead and suddenly said, We're almost there. Brother Maple pulled him back. The space behind the door is very dangerous for beings of order. Although almost 2/3 of them have been converted to order and have the brand of the Origin, but it's never wrong to be careful. Yin Nuoxing instinctively reached out, only to be tightly bound by a pair of wings. Her left hand was also held tightly by Yuan Kong, so she could only raise her right hand from the pile of feathers and give a thumbs up. Let's go. After walking a dozen steps forward, some abnormal light spots suddenly appeared in the air, densely scattered in all directions. It was as if he was looking directly at the sun through the grass, watching the sunlight directly enter his eyes. It was also as if there were mirrors randomly arranged in the distance, reflecting the sunlight from all directions into his eyes. Even if he knew what might be happening, he could not understand what exactly was happening. From the beginning, he did not feel any movement, as if it was happening, and there was no need for any reason or reason. After all, it was something that the heavenly God of Origin and the others made, so it was only natural that it would happen. After the dazzling light faded, the light began to reshape, filling the vision with colorful lights. The space was occupied by a compact arrangement of diamond-shaped patterns, a bit like Huey's primeval domain. Each diamond-shaped pattern looked like a crystal, and as the background in the distance, they were just maps with different colors, as if they were reflected by the lights. A little closer, he could see a large number of diamond-shaped structures pieced together by different numbers of them. moving irregularly around the entire space. He stared at them for a while and felt that they were probably decorations for the background. Probably. This was a warm-toned space with a faint gradient of white and orange. Looking at it, it was as if he could see as far as he could, but when he really looked at the farthest, he could not see the end of it at all. They were standing on the only platform in this space. The brightly colored platform was too eye-catching and could be easily distinguished from this space. It also looked like a light curtain laid flat on the ground, extending to the end of the line of sight. As for the space around them, there was nothing other than the diamond-shaped map in the distance and the large pile of rotating structures. This place was really empty. After checking the condition of the little angel and Yuan Kong, Yin Nuoxing found that they were not affected. Only then did she look at the space. There seems to be some lingering thoughts in the core. Is there anything else? Yes, wait a moment. I remember the core looks like this. Sui Feng squatted on the ground and pressed his hand into the ground. His expression kept changing as if he was trying to dig something out of the ground. After a while, he slowly pulled his hand out and said, "It's done." The space before them flickered, turning from illusory and transparent to solid. It seemed to have been hidden in front of them from the beginning, but now it was revealed. It was the colorful spherical framework with 12 rings around it. It looked like an asteroid. Oh, this thing is really a core. Yin Nuoxing could not help but roll her eyes. This was the thing that was put together in the beginning. At that time, she did not see the core in the center. Now, she still did not see the core in the center. The center of the spherical framework was very conspicuous. She measured it with her eyes and felt that it should be able to fit an energy source into it. Sure enough, the core is gone. Sui Feng scratched his head and sighed. I'm afraid the core has been dug out by those bastards. But they deliberately dismantled the fortress of origin inside and out and dug out the core. Yin Nuoxing thought carefully about what they did. They stole the energy rods and twisted them into something that could provide energy for chaos. I think there should be a corresponding value. After all, they took away the energy rods. Maybe they wanted to twist them into something similar to chaos and then do something, well, to provide energy for chaos and the concept body of chaos. Sui Feng and the other three thought along those lines and felt that the possibility was not small. The energy rods had been used as the energy source for the Death Shroud for a dozen eras, and there was no guarantee that other energy-related items would have been taken away for something else. They did not know how many things were hidden in the soul subduing ring, and naturally did not know how many things had been lost. Only Her Eminence knew that. The group went around the ring belt and came to the center of the empty frame. Yin Nuoxing carefully took out the energy source from the pendant and gestured forward. Then he was stunned. It's not big enough. Sui Feng smiled bitterly. It's definitely not measured by size. Before he could say anything, Little Brother Maple had already taken out a transparent ball of light and stuffed the energy source into it. Then he used order, energy, and laws to adjust it. Halfway through, he heard Little Brother Maple's words and was startled. What did you say? Theoretically, the core should just be hung on it. What are you doing? Yin Nuoxing scratched his head. It's not big enough, so I'm making it bigger and strengthening it. Look, it's big enough now. The energy source was embedded in the transparent ball of light. From the outside, it looked big enough, but they didn't understand what this transparent ball of light was for. Well, I've mentioned it before. This is the energy source world. It's used to strengthen the energy source. It's stuffed with concept-grade law fragments and pure energy output energy cores, a modified version of a new energy core. This thing is directly connected to the void and nothingness and can generate energy on its own. The speed at which it condenses energy is 1,000 times faster than the energy source. Well, it should be said that it strengthens the energy source by 1,000 times, increasing its speed by 1,000 times. That's right. Yin Nuoxing showed a pained expression as he patted the transparent sphere. This thing's cost is too high. It can't be mass-produced. Oh, we understand. It must be more costly energy cores and concept-grade law fragments. I understand. The four nodded to show their understanding. Hearing that, Yin Nuoxing shook his head and sighed, startling them. He pointed at himself and sighed. This thing cost me a little. The four of them were speechless. There was no need to explain. This was a special product that cost him his life. The things in the creation sanctum probably could not replicate it. The second generation's replicable energy source world is on the list for now, but I don't have a good idea at the moment. I have to think about it. For the first generation's one, it takes 1/10 of my life to make one, and I'll have to be bettered in for 180 days if I make 10 of them. Even if I make one at a time, my condition will deteriorate greatly after a period of rest, so it's not worth it. Yin Nuoxing sighed with a look of despair. Everyone was speechless. This thing was good, but it was costly and could not be mass-produced. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.